Good morning, everyone. Glad to see everybody here. This is a beautiful day and a sad day. But we will move right on. We'll have Pastor Hudson come up and give our invocation, and Commissioner Lible will give our Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we know, dear Lord, that you are the author and the finisher of our faith, that you're the great I am, that you're the creator of all things, and that you're, Father, you are a Heavenly Father, that you've given us another day, dear Lord, and we need to rejoice in this day. But Father, in this day, we also need to remember those who have fallen so that we might be free today. Father, we think of those that fell on 9/11 and they gave their lives so that others might be saved. Father, but we also think of those, dear Lord, throughout the history of our great nation that has given all so that we might have the freedoms we have today. Father, I do pray, dear Lord, that as a nation and as a community, that we don't take for granted those who have given so much so that we might be free. And Father, we don't take for granted the freedoms we have today, because as a nation, we are so blessed. And Father, I pray that your hand of blessing would continue to be upon us. Father, I also pray that your hand of blessing, your hand of protection would be upon our policemen and our firefighters throughout this nation that have given their lives, given their efforts, given their time to keep us safe and to keep us free. Father, we thank you for our armed forces stationed around the world today and all that they're doing to keep our nation free. But more than anything, we thank you for Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, the one, dear Lord, who gave his life so that we might be free and free indeed. Father, I pray that you would bless this meeting. Father, I pray that this meeting would be filled with wisdom, that it would be filled with instruction, but more than anything, Father, that it would be filled with compassion, that we might look to one another, that we might help one another as a community, that we might encourage one another, and Father, that we might be a community that is based on love for each other. We pray these things in your precious, holy, and wonderful name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join us in the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if you could give us just 1 minute, sir. We have an audio problem with Ms. Weaver's computer.
Okay. Let's take a short 5-minute recess. Okay, we'll reconvene our meeting, and I'll look for has everyone had a chance to look at these minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes of August 28, 2018 regular meeting.
Okay.
I'll second it, but I do have a question. I think it might be a correction, Tony. Down under appointments, on page 11, it was noted that Kathy Gilliard was the alternate. I believe it is Sandra. Okay.
All right.
So I'll second.
So we have a proper first, proper second with correction. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion moves. Okay, and believe it or not, we're going to recess again, and we're going to open our Port Authority.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes of August 14th regular
Second.
meeting.
Okay, so we have a proper first, proper second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll move to public comment on our Port Authority items. Do I have any public comment on Port Authority items? Seeing none, we'll close that. Any other new business? I don't think so. But we will adjourn our Port Authority. We will also now reconvene our meeting. I don't think I'm going to be doing this all day, but, and then we're going to have a presentation by Terry Newmans, Park Manager. Excuse me, I lost my way here. Announcement for the unit management for the Duns Creek State Park in Pomona Park.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am not Terry Newmans. I am Justin Flincham. I'm the Assistant Park Manager for Ravine Gardens and Duns Creek State Park, also the Palatka to St. Augustine State Trail. On behalf of the Park Service, I'm here to announce that we will be having a public meeting on October 2nd, 2018, from 5:30 to 7:30. This is in regards to the unit management plan for Duns Creek State Park. All public is welcome. We want your ideas, your opinions, your thoughts, and that's what we're shooting for. So again, that is October 2nd, between 5:30 and 7:30 p.m. It will be held at Ravine Gardens State Park at the auditorium and the Civic Center. I have a few flyers here. If anybody would like them, I'll leave them sitting on the counter here. And that's all I have. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then we're going to have our proclamation for the Daughters of American Revolution, and that'll be read by Commissioner Harvey.
Go down there, will you?
I don't have it.
Take that with you. I got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The United States Constitution stands as a testament to the tenacity of the Americans throughout history to maintain their liberties and freedoms and to ensure those unalienable rights to every American. The tradition of celebrating the Constitution was started by the Daughters of the American Revolution. In 1955, the DAR, petitioned Congress to set aside September 17th to 23rd annually to be dedicated for the observance of Constitution Week. The resolution was adopted by the U.S. Congress and signed into public law on August 2nd, 1956 by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The aims of the celebration are to emphasize citizen responsibility for protecting and defending the Constitution, inform people that the Constitution is the basis for Americans' great heritage and the foundation for our way of life, and to encourage the study of historical events which led to the framing of the Constitution of September 1787. Proclamation number 2018, declaring September 17th to the 23rd, 2018 as Constitution Week in Putnam County, Florida. Whereas September 17th, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of the proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Putnam County Board of Commissioners that the week of September 17th to the 23rd, 2018 is hereby declared Constitution Week in Putnam County. Be it further proclaimed that the Board of Commissioners urges all citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by diligently protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that the lost rights will never be regained. Mr. Chairman, I move approval of this proclamation.
Second.
Okay, we have a proper first, proper second, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moves. Thank you.
You gotta say something.
Thank you.
You're
On behalf of the William Bartram chapter of the Daughters of American Revolution, we thank you.
Good deal.
Okay.
Yep, come on. Squeeze in, Mr. Vice Chair.
Looks so serious.
Thank you, ladies.
You look very pretty.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And we have done this, and we're gonna recess at 9:40. I'm hoping right now, though, I have enough time for public comment just before we,
Oh, you got another proclamation,
Oh.
Mr. Chair.
well, I saw that. Okay.
We think you should read this one because of your mistake.
Yes, sir, and
Very
I
long.
make plenty of them. And,
And by the time we need to recess.
This looks like my desk up here. Mr. Romay and Mr. Grimes, if you'd come up front, please. Okay, this is Putnam County Proclamation number 218-66, Patriot Day and Day of Prayer, Service, and Remembrance. Whereas on September 11th, 2001, the American people endured with courage and heroism the worst attack on U.S. soil in the nation's history. And whereas in response to this tragedy, Americans across the country came together in a remarkable spirit of patriotism, unity, and carried out countless acts of kindness, generosity, and compassion. And whereas community organizations and family members of 9/11 victims began observing the anniversary of September 11th as a charitable service day to honor the memory of those who were lost and those who united in response to the tragedy, including law enforcement officers, first responders, and volunteers. And whereas Putnam County has many brave men and women serving our county who heroically, tirelessly, and courageously put their own well-being at risk in difficult, stressful, and often dangerous situations. And whereas the Awakening America Alliance, Cry Out America, has called people to gather for prayer, our historic leaders have called for periods of prayer for our nation, and God has called his people to observe solemn assemblies for generations. And whereas a solemn assembly is a day of restraint where religious and political leaders gather in a serious nature to bring their petitions and prayer to God. And whereas God has promised in the Bible in 2 Chronicles 7:14-15, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin, and I will heal their land. Now mine eyes shall be open, and mine ears attent unto prayer that is made in this place. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Putnam County Board of Commissioners that September 11th is hereby recognized as Patriot Day and a day of prayer, service, and remembrance for the victims of the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. In Putnam County, and its citizens are called upon to honor the lives and memories of those lost through participation in community service and remembrance service ceremonies on this day and throughout the year. Be it further proclaimed that the citizens of Putnam County are urged to show their support and appreciation of our local heroes, including law enforcement officers, firefighters, paramedics, first responders, and volunteers of Putnam County who give of themselves to protect and serve their communities. Thus proclaim this 11th day of September 2018, Board of Commissioners, Putnam County, Florida.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Okay, I have a proper second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You want to go down? Come on, guys. We can make room.
Can you get on your knees and we'd be about the same height?
Squat down a little.
With you on your knees and me up on this podium.
Get you a step stool.
There you go, all right. That's what I'm doing.
We got some tall people up here.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so like I said, we are going to recess at 9:40. Right now, though, I'm going to move to public comment. I have two cards up here. I have Mr. Johnny Counts.
Good morning. I'm Johnny Counts. I live over in Cracker Swamp, Florida. I'd like to offer my my prayers and thoughts also this day to all those who sacrificed, not only those who died, but the families that still sacrifice to this day for what happened on that day I'll never forget, 9/11, 2001, and also in 2012 in Libya at the State Department there in Benghazi. It's, you know, after hearing that proclamation, that brought a little bit to my heart there. I believe there needs to be unity in our land, but it must not be blind, senseless, irresponsible unity. It should not be a unity just for the sake of unity. It needs to be a unity built on sound principles. And I heard every bit of that in that proclamation, that we need to apply ourselves and to not stray so far away that we've gone in this last few years. I thank all the first responders and those that are service to us, whether it's for their career or whether it's just for doing their service to their Lord by taking care of their fellow man. I wanted to thank the William Bartram Trail, William Bartram chapter of the Daughters of the Revolutionary. Confederates in there somewhere. But some words of Washington come to mind. I wanted to also speak about Constitution Day. I wanted to make sure that everyone remembered that next week is that Constitution Day on the 17th, but we take that week to read the Constitution, to pull it out. I mean, it's, less than about 4,400 words with all the signatures and all that's on it. And take the time to sit down as a family and read that and know that. But George said we ought not to look back unless it's to derive useful lessons from past errors and for the purpose of profiting by dear-bought experience. To envy against the things that are past and irremediable is unpleasing. But to steer clear of the shelves and rocks we have struck upon is the part of wisdom equally incumbent on political as other men who have their own little bark, or that of others to navigate through the intricate paths of life, or the trackless ocean to the haven of security and rest. As a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Constitution is part of my religion. It is written into our doctrine in Doctrine and Covenants 101, chapter 80. Said the Lord has established his Constitution upon this land, and he redeemed it by the shedding of blood. And it is up to us to defend and protect and hold that Constitution together. Joseph Story, one of the early founders, he was a Supreme Court justice. He said, "Let the American youth never forget that they possess a noble inheritance, bought by the tolls and sufferings and blood of their ancestors, and capable, if wisely improved and faithfully guarded, of transmitting to the latest posterity all of the substantial blessings of life, the peaceful enjoyment of liberty, property, religion, and independence. The structure has been erected by architects of consummate skill and fidelity. Its foundations are solid, its compartments are beautiful as well as useful. Its arrangements are full of wisdom and order, and its defenses are impregnable from without. It has been reared for immortality, if the work of men may justly aspire to such a title. It may nevertheless perish in an hour by the folly or corruption or negligence of its only keepers, the people. Republics are created by the virtue, public spirit, and intelligence of the citizens. They fall when the wise are banished from the public councils because they dare to be honest, and the profligate are rewarded because they flatter the people in order to betray them." How true those words are, written back in the late 1700s. I hope that everyone will take the time to read the Constitution today, this coming up week, and continue to learn of it, to know of the laws that keep us safe and know what our liberties are. It's our duty as citizens to know it, but as elected officials, constitutionally elected officials, it's not only your duty, it's your responsibility, it's your reading assignment to know it, to ponder its teachings and to apply it in everything you do for the people. To support the Constitution, to observe the laws, is to be true to our own higher nature. That is the path, and the only path towards liberty. To resist them and violate them is to become enemies to ourselves and instruments of our own destruction. That is the path towards servitude. Obedience is not for the protection of someone else, but for the protection of ourselves. It needs to be remembered that it has to be secured, not through the action of others, but through our own actions. Liberty is not collective, it is personal. all liberty is individual liberty. To live under the American Constitution is the greatest political privilege that was ever accorded to the human race. That was President Calvin Coolidge, 1924. May we build our patriotism upon the truth that America was founded with inspired and time-honored principles of reverence and honor and the humble acknowledgement of the Almighty, the source from whom all blessings flow. President Washington said the Constitution is a guide I will never abandon, and it's something that I feel very strongly that I believe we all should follow that precept. And I thank you for your time, and I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Counts. Mr. Earl Bellinger.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Earl Ballinger, 496 Clifton Road, Crescent City. I was up here last meeting complaining about the ditches not being mowed, and there was a couple other ladies up here complaining at the same time. And I said, ditches not being mowed is a safety issue. On my driveway alone, there's 3 families that use this driveway, plus UPS, plus other businesses coming in and out, family, friends. I mean, it is a safety issue. And to help things, today I brought you some pictures.
Before you bring that up here, that's got to go to Tony. That's got to go over here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Earl. Appreciate it. Here, you gave me 2.
We just pass them on.
Now, Earl, you're out here with no shirt on. Now,
That is my summer work uniform.
your dog's got a shirt on, but you don't.
He's got a harness on because he needs it. Now, the picture shows those things. Last time I said they were over 6 foot. Well, I'm standing beside them, and you can see they're definitely over 6 foot because, I mean, I don't make the 6 foot mark, and they're way over my head. This is a safety issue for me, for everybody on Clifton Road, and the other 2 ladies, what part of the county they lived in. It's a safety issue everywhere. Now, the last time I contacted Public Works, they said it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks before they could borrow someone from another area to come down and mow. Well, that 2 or 3 weeks is come and gone. And it's getting pretty bad. Last week, the potato farm mowed their ditch. They've got their own boom mower and their own tractor and all that stuff. They did it. Why can't we get them to do it? Last meeting, there was two men retired from Public Works. They drove the boom mowers. Hire them back as contractors. I mean, it's getting pretty bad. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll just go ahead and comment on that we have, I actually have seen the mowers out there. I should have taken a picture of it so I could put it up here, but the women that were in here, that area got mowed. I know that they are mowing. Do you have any comment there, Mr. Tompkins? But I know that the mowers are out operation. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Lible.
I would be glad to inform you that I spoke with our county administrator, Mr. Suggs, yesterday, and at today's workshop this afternoon, we are going to discuss some mowing challenges and hopefully come up with solutions. Yes, we did get behind a little bit with some personnel that had left, and we're going to try to discuss and find ways to shore that up this afternoon. You bring up a great point. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I
Yes, you
take
can.
my 3 minutes for public comment?
You can.
You got attorney hat off.
Good morning. Something I think we all need to remember today as well is what we were going through last year with Hurricane Irma. I just want us to all remember and recognize the hard work and dedication of all of the employees in the county and the city of Palaca, and our first responders that were all working sometimes over 24 hours a day, and even more, to ensure that the residents of this county and this city were being protected and taken care of. I personally saw a lot of people going above and beyond the call of duty to make sure our citizens were getting the best service they could get from those local government employees. So I just wanted to personally recognize and thank all of them again.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? Any other public comment? Seeing no other public comment, I'm going to close that, and what we're going to do now, we're going to...
We might be able to get through that.
Probably would. 5 minutes?
If no one pulls anything.
Okay. All right, we're going to try to go through our consent agenda. I'm going to start with Mr. Lible,
I have nothing to pull today, sir.
Mr. Pickens.
nothing.
Mr. Turner.
I think I want to pull them all.
You would. And you have that right.
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, that's,
Based on that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through G as listed in our agenda.
I second it.
all right, so we have a proper first and a proper second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we approve the consent agenda. I'm going to recess now so that we can go out, those that want to join us out front here for the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony. We're just going to take a recess. Yes.
We probably should ask Mr. Smith, does he want to make some comments? We've got 4 minutes, and then he may or may not be able to back with us after the break.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
We have no comments today, thank
There
you.
you go.
Okay, all right, then we'll go through our comments, and we are going to take a recess now, and you're welcome to meet us out front. Everybody, we don't need our clerk of courts. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Mr. Lible?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll reconvene our meeting, and we will move to our, which is supposed to be our 10 o'clock zoning map amendment, and I'll hand this over to Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman, before we get started.
Yes, sir.
This is a quasi-judicial hearing. As such, I would request that each of you disclose any ex parte communications that you have had regarding this matter before this hearing, and also indicate whether or not you are, notwithstanding those communications, you are still able to make an impartial decision based upon the hearing here today. Once you are all done with that, then we will ask the clerk to swear in anybody that wishes to give testimony in this matter.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll start over here. Mr. Lible?
Thank you, council. I have had communications with both the property owner and his manager, and I've had 2 site visits, and I feel confident I can be impartial in my decision.
Mr. Pickens?
I've had conversations with Joey Froelich and Susan L. Roberts from the Planning Commission. I've had a conversation with Phil Leary, had a conversation with George Young. I think that's it, and it will not affect my decision.
Okay. Mr. Turner?
Mr. Chairman, I've had multiple conversations with both sides of the issue, and it will not affect my decision today.
Mr. Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had multiple conversations with Mr. Leary and Mr. Holmes, and it will not affect my decision.
Mr. Chairman, I have to add a few. Also, with Mr. Young, I've had a conversation too, Council.
Yes. And I myself have had several conversations on both sides. It's not going to affect my decision whatsoever.
Thank you. Ms. Weaver?
Okay, Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chairman and Commission, the project before you today is PUD 18-002. The applicant is Roland Wickblom, PKAB USA LLC. His agent, Mr. Philip Leary. The request is to rezone 317.98 acres of agriculture to planned unit development. The purpose is to provide for a private motocross training facility along with RV sites for short-term stays for participants involved in the training activities. The location of the project site is 401 Milliken Road in the Bostwick area of the county. Here's a quick aerial of the site with the boundaries of the property outlined. Just some basic project information. This is a private motocross training facility that will include, or is proposed to include, 3 motocross tracks, 20 RV sites for short-term stays while the participants involved in the training activities on site. There is a single-family residence on the site that will be upgraded to commercial transient lodging standards. The majority of the property will remain in active agricultural uses. The future land use designation is A2 on the adopted future land use map, and zoning of the site is agriculture. Here's a look at the future land use of the site and surrounding. You will see in the northwest very corner of the project site there is industrial land use with agriculture 2 surrounding the project site on all the other areas. The existing zoning of the whole area is agriculture. If the proposed zoning is approved, it will change to PUD, planned unit development. It's hard to see, I recognize a general concept site plan. And here's a site layout of the project with overlaying on the aerial. One of the key things we look at in rezoning is comp plan consistency. As I indicated, this future land use is Ag 2, and in Ag 2 consists of areas in the county that are used for silviculture, rangeland, and other agricultural uses. Residential uses are allowed in the Ag 2 land use. Further, the Ag 2 future land use designation allows for rural recreational uses, and the Land Development Code will regulate the more intensive rural recreational uses. Policy A193B5 allows for PUD zoning in any future land use designation as long as it is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comp plan, meets the criteria of the Land Development Code, and does not increase the intensity or density of uses in the underlying land use category. In looking at the comp plan consistency, rural recreational uses are defined in the comp plan as any commercial or non-commercial recreational activity, which by the nature of either the use or operation or the noise of such uses requires the use be located on large parcels of land and may be appropriately located outside the urban area. The allowed uses are defined, and they include, among other things, motorcycle dirt tracks and courses. The proposed use of the motocross training facility including dirt tracks, meets the definition of rural recreational use set forth in the comp plan. And again, rural recreational uses are a permitted allowable use in the Ag 2 land use category. Staff does not believe the proposed PUD increases the intensity or density of uses over what the allowed Ag 2 land use category proposes. The proposed motocross facility is consistent with the land use designation. There, in the Land Development Code, Section 40202, there are requirements for every planned unit development rezoning that needs to be met. I will touch base on all of these real quickly. And again, Section 40202A requires that the application for rezoning to PUD present evidence that the rezoning is justified by one or more of the following. Staff finds that the Land Development Code allows for motorsports facilities and overnight recreational parks only through the approval of planned unit development. The proposed PUD to allow private motocross training and associated overnight RV park is justified, is staff's finding. Next criteria, the density or intensity character of type of the development proposed is consistent with the comp plan, the future land use map, and concurrency system. As I've indicated previously, the county comp plan permits rural recreational uses in the Ag 2 future land use category. The uses proposed in the PUD fit the definition of rural recreation adopted by in the future land use element of the county comp plan, and thus staff believes the proposed rezoning meets this criteria. The next criteria is that the uses proposed are compatible with the terrain and the existing or planned uses of properties surrounding the PUD. The subject property, as I've shown, is surrounded primarily by silviculture and agricultural uses in the agriculture zoning district and Ag 2 land use, future land use category. Section 30233 of the Land Development Code requires racing surface of motor sports facility to be a minimum of 500 feet from the nearest property line of any proposed, of any property in which there is a residential use or structure. And I will go into this a little further later on. The motocross tracks are approximately 1,100 feet from the western property boundary, which are the closest properties with residential uses on them to this project. In addition, the PUD agreement places additional restrictions on the times of use, the maximum number of riders at any given time, and other measures that staff feels reduce the noise from the proposed use. Next criteria, the residential density of the PUD must comply with the density limitations of each use category. And as I indicated, there's an existing single-family residence on the property that will be converted to a commercial transient lodging. The Land Development Code does not count overnight recreational parks or vehicles or parks as residential, and thus are not included in density calculations per Section 30236B1 of the Land Development Code. Next criteria, use of usable open space plazas and recreational areas provided within the PUD must be consistent with the policies of the comp plan and must be sufficient to provide the appropriate recreational opportunities. The development plan does not propose any public open space or recreational areas, and none of these uses are required for this type of project. The motocross training facility is private. The general public will not be allowed to utilize the site. The majority of the property will be utilized for agricultural uses allowed within and under the agriculture zoning district. Next criteria, the site of the PUD must be suitable for use in a manner proposed without hazards to persons either on or off the site with the likelihood of increased flooding, erosion, or other dangers. The use of the site as a motocross training site and facility and short-term overnight stays will not increase the likelihood of flooding, erosion, or other dangers. The next criteria, all uses permitted in the PUD shall have access to a public street either directly or by way of a private road. The project access is, the project has direct access to Milliken Road via private driveway. Next criteria, sufficient off-street and on-street parking. There's no need for any on-street parking resulting from this project. There's adequate area within the project boundaries for parking of both automobiles and RVs. Next criteria, utilities and essential public services, including sanitary sewer, potable water, fire, etc., shall be adequate and have available capacity. The site is served by on-site septic system, or will be served by on-site septic system with potable water provided by private wells. The sanitary sewer system for the RV sites will be permitted by the Department of Health before utilization of the sites by the short-term guests. With every PUD, we include a PUD agreement, and this is incorporated as part of the ordinance and basically lays the restrictions specific for this project that the project will have to meet. I'm going to touch base on what I believe are the highlights of the PUD agreement as proposed. One, there's no public access or general public utilization of the motocross training facilities, including the tracks. This is a private entity and a private effort. Hours of operation for the motocross training will be limited to Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And Sunday, there will be no motorcycle riding on the motocross training. Muffler arresters are required or will be required for all motorcycles utilizing the facility. A maximum of 15 riders will be allowed on the motocross training tracks at any one time. That's singularly or in combination. There would be no more than 15 riders at any one time. A 12-foot earthen berm shall be constructed on the west side of the motocross tracks to dampen the noise from the use of the tracks. Relocation of the westernmost track east of the other two tracks. And I'll show a photo of that in a second. Maximum number of RV sites, it will be 20 for club members only. All RV sites shall have adequate sanitary sewer system permitted by the Department of Health. And finally, the existing single-family residential structure will be upgraded to commercial transient lodging standards prior to use by club members. Subsequent to the Planning Commission hearing, and based on some of the discussions at that hearing, the applicant has proposed some additional conditions. Those conditions are included in the draft ordinance and PUD agreement that is presented to you, but I just wanted to go over to let you know what changes were made after the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, although had some discussion, they didn't consider these exclusively on their own. One is the inclusion of the muffler arresters required for all motorcycles. Two is reducing the maximum number of riders from 20 to 15 at any one time. The next one was the increase of the earthen berm from 8 feet to 12 feet. And then lastly was the relocation of the westernmost track to east of the other two tracks. Staff findings. Staff finds that the applicant, or just findings and recommendations in general. Staff finds that the application as presented it shows evidence that the rezoning to PUD is justified. The proposed rezoning and development is consistent with the future land use designation. The proposed project is compatible with the existing land uses in the area. The development is consistent with the requirements for PUD zoning and consistent with other comp plan goals, objectives, and policies. Staff recommends approval of the request to rezone 317.98 acres of land from agriculture to planned unit development, subject to the inclusion of the PAKB Motocross PUD Development Agreement. The Planning Commission addressed this project at July 11th, 2018 public hearing. The Planning Commission voted 5-2 to recommend denial to the board for the request to rezone the 317.98 acres from agriculture to planned unit development. Their primary purpose for making that recommendation was they felt it was not compatible with the adjacent existing proposed uses of properties surrounding the PUD based on the design to avoid undue noise and other odor and traffic and other nuisances of the project. And again, it primarily revolved around the noise issue. This is just in addition to the questions that staff will take. I wanted to point out on this aerial photo, shows the existing tracks, motocross tracks on the project. That northernmost track, the one that's closest to the western boundary, which is approximately 1,100 feet from the western boundary, is the track that will be relocated to the east, further away from the western boundary. Is there any questions of staff at this point?
Mr. Chairman, before you get into that, if I might inquire of staff for clarification. Mr. Brown, in the PUD agreement, in the recommended PUD rezoning, our land development code 302.33 regarding motorsports facility under sub C lists 19 standards and conditions for approval that are a minimum that must be addressed. Included in those is sound levels and a requirement that the sound levels operate at no more than 115 decibels at a 50-foot drive-by. Have all these conditions, specifically that one, been addressed?
Yes, and they are, and the majority of them, I can't say all of them, that one specifically is included as a condition of the proposed development agreement. That specific item is included as part of the development agreement and a condition, but all 19 have been addressed, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir. Mr. Turner?
Taking that one step further, have they been addressed in writing in the development agreement, all the
Yes,
19 items?
Any lighting would have to meet, and again, also with signs, if there are any, there's none proposed, but any lighting and signs would have to meet the requirements of the land development code, and we have specific requirements for lighting, again, and those are mostly having to be cut off to prevent lights from shining up and out, maintain it. But there is no lighting proposed, but there is a condition that should lighting be included, it would have to meet the conditions of the land development code.
Thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown, and I'm just asking, and maybe Mr. Manning can help me on this. It seems like that there was a lot of changes after the denial from the Planning Commission. I'm just asking this question, and I didn't get a chance to ask you yesterday, and I apologize for that, but are we in the proper venue for that at this moment, based on all the changes that have occurred? Is this normal to go back and renegotiate and then come to us with an appeal? The appeal was based on the fact of the Planning Commission at that time.
Well, it's not an appeal. The way Putnam County has it set up is that the Planning Commission makes a recommendation based upon the hearing the matter before the Planning Commission. It's certainly, there can be changes after that. That is only a recommendation to this board. That's why this is a quasi-judicial hearing here today. So their recommendation is only one of your considerations. So certainly there could be changes post Planning Commission to address those concerns by the applicant in hopes of gaining approval before this body today. But this is a first in time quasi-judicial hearing to consider the matter by you all. It is not considered an appeal, so you can consider all evidence presented here today.
So it's not an appeal?
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners? Any other okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I will open now for public comment.
The applicant should be provided an opportunity next, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Then let's do that. Let's bring the applicant up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Good morning. Phil Leary, Leary Governmental Affairs Consultants, 6052 Silver Lake Drive, Palatka, Florida. I'm a professional land use planner, a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and here today representing PKAB USA and the three principals of that corporation, Roland Wickblum, Dick Wixel, and Mangus Gabrielson, who actually, and all three of their sons are, or two of them are professional riders, and one is in the process of being one. Mr. Brown did, an excellent job in presenting the rezoning case as it pertains to consistency with the comprehensive plan and the fact that this is not just consistent, this is where the comprehensive plan dictates that this type of facility, rural recreational use, should be located. The PUD, in relationship to the comprehensive plan and the land development code, which were both adopted by ordinance in our local law based on Chapter 163, the Florida statutes, the Growth Management Act, Comprehensive Planning and Growth Management Act, are law. And essentially, consistency with that and the ability to impact off-site or mitigate off-site impacts are part of that, in which we have indicated through the four additional criteria, the four additional conditions, that after the planning board meeting, the planning commission meeting, we felt like they made some salient points, the property owners in the vicinity and their representatives. And so we asked the staff to include those conditions to even broaden the ability to mitigate those off-site impacts. And we think that we've done that, and that also is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development code. From the standpoint, two different things. The planning commission got very confused. Quite frankly, a motion was made by one of the planning commission members that he didn't like it. He didn't like it and didn't like the fact that it created noise. And that was his motion. Well, the county attorney said you got to have something substantial as it pertains to the comprehensive plan. So the county attorney helped him fashion the motion, which is what's before you today. There were two or three members that basically had these other conditions, which we discussed all of them at the planning commission meeting, been included, would have voted in favor of that. It would have probably been a 4-3 favorable vote. But a lot of confusion, and a topic for another discussion for another day is training for your planning commission as to their role in this whole process and under the comprehensive plan in Chapter 163. Tremendous economic impact from this private motocross training facility. Just three of the businesses that I've talked to that they have spent, and of course there's been no activity there for 5 months. Kubota Futch's Tractor Supply, they do a tremendous amount of business with them. Bramlett's, they've bought over $7,000 worth of irrigation equipment because they have to have water on the tracks at certain times to keep the dust down. Capital City Bank, they do all their banking there. Hotels, restaurants, grocery and retail stores. The total economic impact, and you'll hear testimony in a few minutes from one of the trainers, is pretty overwhelming. And the fact that there's a reason that they chose Putnam County, you also hear an explanation as to why. This motocross industry is a multi-billion-dollar business nationwide and worldwide. And the fact that they wanted to come to Putnam County is a tremendous asset and something I think that we could build off on our ecotourism business that we currently are promoting so strongly now. you know, quite frankly, we're not going to get another Seminole Electric or Georgia Pacific here. The last major business that had employees that averaged $40,000 to $50,000 a year in income was St. John's Shipbuilding on Stokes Landing Road. I represented them as part of the PUD for that. Since that time, I'm not aware of any other major industry that's come in. So we need to look at, you know, this, number one, the consistency with the comprehensive plan, with the land development code, that the conditions will offset impacts, and the fact that the potential for the county from an ecotourism standpoint is unlimited. You know, the entire, as Mr. Brown showed you, the entire area is zoned agriculture and has an agricultural land use designation. You know, if you ever looked at what some of the permitted uses are in there, you know, sawmills, private landing strips, dust crop plain, you know, slaughterhouses. So, you know, there's not a residential component to that, even though there are residences within 3/4 of a mile. Essentially, they're in agricultural zoning and agricultural land use. So essentially, you know, they're subject to what is permitted under the ordinance for agricultural uses. Moving the track, the western track, will result in no activity, no riding, closer than 3,000 feet, almost 3/4 of a mile from any residence, which is, you know, incredible. And for the record, and because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, and of course, as you know, only what's testified here and presented here to you can be heard at the circuit court level, and we, you know, certainly hope, God, we don't have to go there and spend the thousands of dollars. But what the county has already done is set a precedent with the Hogwaller PUD, some differences, but I'm just going to go through them for the record. The PKAB is proposing 300 acres. Of that, less than 30 acres is used, less than 10%. The Hogwaller 630 acres, probably 40% of that is used for riding. Unlimited number of riders there. We're limited to 15, and in actuality, there'll probably never be more than 8 on a track at one time. They'll be coming and going, but never more than 15 riding, period. PKAB's private, you know, Hogwaller's public. Hours of operation. This is one of the most restrictive hours of operation for a facility like this that in my 25 years practicing planning, land use, and zoning, and as a former county planning director, that I've, you know, proposed. I mean, 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, 10 to 3 on Saturday, no Sunday riding. Hogwaller, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 365 days a year. The 12-foot berm, substantially higher, 4 foot higher than what Hogwaller has at 8 feet. And again, the distance between the residences and the tracks. My clients want to be good neighbors. And in fact, up until about 8 months ago, and you'll hear why that changed, they'd been there for 3 years, never a complaint. There were some changes in operations that subsequently led to the noise levels, and subsequently led to the fact that, you know, the code enforcement shut down the operation. My client has, you know, given me a statement basically stating that during his operation, and again, these owners are from Sweden. They're foreigners, and that they invested in this as for not only their sons but their family. They have over $1 million investment in the property and the buildings. The reason, and I wasn't brought into this until March after the code enforcement action, that they were never told that they needed a PUD or a motocross special exception to have the operation. I mean, it's as simple as that. They were unaware. Neither the real estate agent who, you know, wanted their money in to get out, the attorney who did the closing, or anybody else involved in the process, you know, told them you need to go to the county and, you know, get the zoning changed. And Mr. Brown, I checked with him. He said that there was never any discussion from the county prior to January or February when the code enforcement action took place that they needed that they needed a rezoning. So, in summary, it's very clear. I'm going to reiterate the staff recommendation. Your professional staff, Mr. Brown has over 35 years' experience. I've worked with him for years. Highly regarded professional planner. That they recommend that the proposed development and rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the existing land use in the area, consistent with the requirements for the PUD zoning, consistent with the future land use map designation, and consistent with the comprehensive plan goals, objectives, and policies. I'll stop there and answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, seeing as though we're setting the record straight for when it's going to court, I think there's a major difference between this situation and Hogwaller. And that major difference in my book is before Hogwaller dug a single hole or ran a single mud bog out there, they came in and got their land use that they needed. And it shouldn't, I'm trying to do this politically correct, ignorance is no excuse for breaking the law. So in my opinion, just to set the record straight, we need to also say there's a large difference here between Hogwaller and this situation because Hogwaller permitted ahead of time. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Chairman. And so my clients here today, they were ignorant of the fact. I can tell you that you can ride all over this county and see code violations that people probably don't realize they're in violation of. If you had a code enforcement staff of 100 people, you can do that. You could probably, fill up the code enforcement hearings with 150 people at every meeting. They understand that they did that. The difference in what I was trying to point out was specifically as it pertains to the PUD, that what the county has set as a precedent. Now, maybe they did it, and obviously they came in before they started the operation. That's, unfortunate on my client's position, but I had no control over that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Mr. Harvey?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Leary, I'm going to ask this question to everyone that stands up today. And this is what's been driving me nuts for the last few weeks. And let me preface this by saying I enjoy private property rights. I think that's a given in this country. I also think our PUD is one of the best tools we have in the toolbox because without that, people can just about do whatever they want to do on the property, and that's not really fair. So this way it gives parameters to live in. And since we mentioned Hogwaller, surely they have outgrown their PUD at times and have come back to us. But that creates another public hearing. So I think the PUD is the best thing since sliced bread, in this commissioner's opinion, for planning. But I'm going to ask you as a professional, because I asked Mr. Brown the same question yesterday. I asked our attorney the same question. If not here, where? That's the question I want to ask. If it's not going to be allowed here at this location, then where in the county do we put somebody who wants to come in? And I'm going to ask that to both sides. So,
well, Commissioner, I think that's a valid question. And having the experience of set in 3 different venues as a county planning director, as a former local government elected official, and as a professional planner for over 25 years, you adopt a comprehensive plan so that you can dictate where something should go. And specifically, that's what your comprehensive plan states. It's consistent, and this is where it should go. And I don't know where else you could put it. I mean, there really is no other place. And so and from a planning and land use law standpoint, clearly, there's no question.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Turner.
But to take that one step further, to think that the people that sat on the planning commission had the ability to foresee every event that would come in the future, and so that would make it consistent by writing it in, that's just not fair to ask. I mean, when you put it in your plan that you want certain things in a certain area, I get it, believe me. I was on the planning commission when we wrote this comp plan. There's no way that back then that we saw a hog waller or a motorcycle track or any of these things coming down the line. I know that there are uses that are allowed, but it doesn't necessarily automatically make them allowed. That's why we have this hearing process.
Well, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, you make a good point there, and that's also why you have the condition agreement of conditions as part of that, so that you can, assure that the offsite impacts, if there are any, are mitigated, and clearly that's been done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioners, any questions?
Good. I'm good right now.
Okay,
All right, we have one other speaker.
thank you. I know you're going to hear this over and over, but your name and address.
My name is Brad Jereminski. My address is 409 Spring Ridge Court in St. Augustine, Florida. I'm the trainer involved at the Nordic Club. And I'd first like to start by saying I apologize for the noise. That was completely, I'm responsible for it, and I'll tell you in detail why we're in this position. And I'm blaming it on Mother Nature. We had a real wet winter. And with the winter that we had with the rain, we were forced to find dry portions of the property that I could continue to train my guys, which I'll go into detail about, which led us to that eastern northeast corner. I don't remember if the graph is up anymore, but that's what put us in that portion of the property, is finding something that didn't have water on it, something that was dry, something that wasn't going to tear up motorcycles. So what created the noise was Mother Nature putting us in that position. And then two, I felt it necessary that we needed to practice our starting procedure. So what we did is we put up a 10-person starting gate. Unfortunately, I put the starting gate facing the wood line, thinking I don't want to put it towards Milliken Road because it's an open field and there's houses there. I thought the trees would be enough of a buffer to mitigate, the noise traveling through the woods. So when you have 10 motorcycles practicing starts at full RPM, I can surely attest that that's noisy. I get it, 100%. But the reason why the complaints came this year and why there was such an influx in noise was, one, we did the riding at a different portion of the property, and two, we put that starting gate in the worst possible spot. Looking at it, if I could rewind time, and I chuckled because I'm not making light of this, but if I could rewind it and do it again, just by simply facing it the other direction and doing some of these things with the berm, we would be having a much different conversation right now. So my program runs Monday through Thursday. There's no way I can get the guys on the track any earlier than 10 a.m. It's just simply not going to happen. We work out in the morning. By the time they prep and water the track and get it ready for the day's activities, it's 10 o'clock. We're done riding. We're done training by 3 p.m. So I've got from 10 to 3 p.m. that I have a guys of 8 to 10 riders, that every one of them are from outside the United States and or the state. None of them are Florida residents. And why do we come to Putnam County? We come to Putnam County because of the terrain. There's no clay here, there's no rock here, there's no beach sand. The Nordic Club is a jewel in terms of training facility. So there are other training facilities within the area, within the country, Tallahassee area, the Carolinas, what's going to be left after the hurricane. But you're dealing with climate, you're dealing with terrain, you're dealing with things that we don't have here in Putnam County, which I moved down from. I'm a Yankee. I came down from Northern Illinois. And I came down because once I moved down here and did a riding trip, and I saw the potential, and I met the Nordic Club members, or the the owners at a race. That's when we started pitching the idea of like, hey, why don't we try and do something in Putnam County? So when they originally built this, Larry, you were talking about, or I'm sorry, maybe it was Terry, one of you. Yes, this is Terry. Why didn't they ask permission first? They built it originally for their kids. They built it originally just to have a place to go ride, because Sweden is, it's cold and terrible there a lot of time of the year. So once they built this facility that they then, couldn't fund, or they were looking for an outside source of revenue, in comes my bright idea, and it gave them a revenue stream of how they can make money while they're back home in the summer. So that's how we kind of got in this position, by not necessarily asking for permission before we started this, but really not knowing what the grand scheme of thing was before we got in this position. So the other thing I'd like to talk to you about is how to mitigate, how to manage the noise. The noise was a huge issue in about 2003. All the motorcycles they adopted this 4-stroke technology, this clean burning motorcycle, right? That didn't have the smoke in the air. So they managed to alleviate any environmental protection regulations with smoke, but then we got into noise pollution. So after many of these hearings across the United States, the manufacturers came out with a mandatory 96 decibel motorcycle, meaning they can't leave the showroom floor if they're louder than 96 decibels. So what they do, and I have one in my pocket, I brought it, is these little inserts that a bike that is over a 96 dB, all this does is insert into the back of the exhaust with a little Allen wrench, and there's a little set screw that it keeps it intact. So it inserts within 30 seconds, and you take it out within 30 seconds. So it's a real easy plug and play that would manage the noise, right? So that's the big thing, is any bike that isn't compliant is mandatory to run an insert, which then the trainer, which would be me, is responsible to make sure that the guys are in compliance, just like they're responsible to make sure they get to bed, just like make sure they're responsible when they're not up to no good on the weekends, just like everything else is put into place during this structure. So I'm the equivalent to a football coach, a basketball coach, and I run a program based on that mentality through a chaotic environment such as motocross. The other thing I'd like to bring your attention is the evolution of the sport, the introduction of the electric motorcycle. Within, they're out now and they're competing now. The equivalent of a Tesla, right, motorcycle. The sport will be electric within 3 years, just like any other thing. It's technology, and this is an issue that is not just here in Putnam County and with the neighbors, which I do apologize, but there's things that are coming down the pipe that are going to be non-existent. Noise being one of them. Any questions?
Yes, sir, Mr. Lible.
Welcome, Brad. Thank you for the explanations and the apologies also. In the PUD agreement as it reads now, the reference to mufflers is they mention arresters, spark arresters, which being in that industry is really not a muffler device. So what I'm asking, would you support a language change from spark arresters to mufflers, or as you just demonstrated, a plug or insert?
Most definitely, but I want to go on record by saying that the arresters are only to keep the bikes within a certain zone. Now, I will go on record by saying I do test. I do my own sound testing. When I'm at the races, when you're at a sanctioned event, your motorcycle cannot be over 96 dB, 98 dB, depending on the event that we're at. So we randomly will do testing on the edge of the track, and I've never had a reading, higher than a 107 on the edge of the track. And I'm talking with dirt, like coming off the track, hitting me, being close. Now, that's one bike going through the corner at a time. So in a training environment, the other thing I want to point out is a training environment isn't where we're just riding nonstop from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's we work a section, we talk, we discuss it, we video it, we go train just like a football practice would. So there's segments to the day that aren't going to be nonstop, continual noise going on and off, on throughout the day. So I would absolutely agree that spark arresters is not the language that we need to insert to reduce the noise. And all it does is it baffles, it restricts the end of the exhaust to regulate the noise. So did I dance around that question, or did I answer that?
You
correctly?
did. I just felt the language was
Yeah, no, I
grossly
agree with that.
wrong.
I agree with that.
It would do nothing. I mean, that's to prevent
Right.
forest fires,
And
not
I
produce noise.
also, I would also suggest, I mean, if we're going to do this, let's do this once. I would also suggest 15 feet on that berm. I don't want to, I don't want to sidestep Phil there, but we're not taking into consideration when the motorcycles are in the air that a couple more feet of dirt is only going to help the issue. 8 feet is not going to cut it. So then we went to 10 or 12. I'm not sure what the latest was, but it's got to be a minimum of 15. And then by the time you get vegetation growing on that, then we're in good shape. But look, I'm only here to try and be as proactive as I can in terms of the neighbors that have been offended or upset, and I do deeply apologize, and I take full responsibility for that, thinking that I was trying to avoid the neighbors on Milliken Road because there was no buffer between those guys, those homeowners, and the trek. I mean, you can see them. So I thought then putting the noise up against a tree is how can we go wrong?
One more question, and I'll leave you
Sure
alone.
thing.
How confident are you in the electric technology?
100%. It's already there.
All right.
It's already there. In fact, the only reason that it's not being shoved down our throat is is politics. The Japanese manufacturers haven't caught up with the technology, so they're trying to preserve the integrity of the sport by letting the manufacturers catch up and kind of learn it, and then everybody have a fair.
I'm gonna push you on out there now with that answer. So would you
Right.
commit to totally electric bikes?
100%. And I can't wait. Trust me, being around bikes all day, I ride very little myself. It's like if you own a pizza parlor, the last thing you're going to do is eat pizza, right? So, the noise gets to you. I understand it. I completely sympathize with the neighbors. I do. And this isn't my first meeting that I've been to. We had to do a rezoning for, property up north that I was involved with. And it was the same thing. It was inserts, dirt berms, and hours of operation. And if we can coexist on whatever level that is, great. I'm here to say, no matter what, there's gonna be some level of noise. You're gonna hear something, but what's tolerable, and then you start factoring into, all the other people that are down here, spending money at the gas stations, and their parents come down and, spend money in hotel and lodging. I'm not smart enough to tell you the economic impact of what 10 guys training does to Putnam County, but it's money that wasn't there in the first place.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brad, appreciate you coming up and explaining some things. The hours of operation, Mr. Leary has suggested 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, 10 to 3 on Saturday, none on Sunday, but you pretty much testified that your operation is from Monday through Thursday, 10 to 3. What's the difference there?
Okay, I'm glad you clarified because I skipped over that. So my training program with my full-time riders is Monday through Thursday.
Okay.
In the evenings, I'll have introductory lessons where I've got youth and beginner classes that I'm, my son's baseball team will have kids that want to come out and ride. So there's instances where I'll have, kids come in the afternoon that may ride till 5 o'clock or after school. And with the time change, we've kind of run out of daylight. So, that 5 o'clock is kind of the window. Same thing with the Saturday. If I have, entry-level programs or kind of introducing people to the sport, that would be an opportunity that I would use those kind of flex dates, so to speak. But the majority of the quote-unquote noise is, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And in theory, no one's outside barbecuing, and we're inside, right? So that those are hours of operation where if I'm gonna make noise, I'll be make sure that it's tolerable. That would be the time frame to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, I have a question for you that Brad brought up. The original owners built that racetrack for their family. My question to you is, because I already said how much I like a PUD, with that in mind, building it for a family, would that have produced any zoning change or anything like that? Are we allowed to ride our motorcycles on private property?
Yes, you can ride motorcycles on your private property.
So had this never turned into a business, this would have never been here today, if it was just for family use.
If it was just a single track for a family, it probably would not be here today. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pickens?
Are all the motorcycles involved, are they four-stroke?
No, sir. There are still, one or two individuals that race a two-stroke division class. And ironically enough, the decibel reading of a two-stroke on the edge of a track is about 88 dB. And the reason I know these numbers is I do my own testing. That a four-stroke will have as high as 103, 104 at full throttle, depending on the exhaust. But the two-stroke, there are one or two of them that I train that have a far lesser decibel rating.
Okay, I guess with this track, you're trying to create race day conditions for these drivers?
Exactly.
So performance, an effective performance on this motorcycle would hinder them, so this was not effective?
Yes, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's a hot button topic, right? So these, you want to have something as close to you're competing on as possible, but then not sacrifice dollar, right? So the faster you make the motorcycle, the less reliable it is. So when you're putting hours upon hours upon hours on a bike in this terrain during the month, it's more constant maintenance, constant upkeep, breakdown, things of that nature. So we try and make the bikes as reliable as possible. So the bikes that they're racing or they're competing at, they remain fresh and unused, and the bikes that we're practicing on and destroying, those are the ones that are a little bit more stock form, so to speak.
Okay, you alluded to, and I think you answered the question I'm about to ask, is an 8-foot berm is not very high.
Correct.
And what little I've watched of motocross lately, these bikes probably go 20 feet in the air.
Correct.
So I assume if you've got race day conditions, you've got jumps.
Correct.
So they could be 20 feet in the air, so you're suggesting a 15-foot berm?
Correct. But I do want to point out that if we are in excess of 20 feet, and I know that because when you fall off, you're coming down 20 feet. So bones break quick. So I try and mitigate as much of that danger as possible. The reason that I'm suggesting a 15-foot high berm is if I have a 10-foot ramp, when the motorcycles are in the air, we're no longer accelerating. We could be 40 feet in the air, 50 feet in the air, and the bikes are still going to be quiet. So when you're accelerating up the ramp of the jump, that's where the combustion, right? That's where the noise is coming from. Once they're airborne, the damage is done, so to speak, both figuratively. So without a doubt, and I'll go on record by saying, 15 should be the minimum, because it's just dirt. Why not add that a little bit of insulation while we're doing it the first time?
Okay, Mike, since you're up, I've got a question to follow up on Commissioner Harvey's question. This was started as just a family track, and now we're in this particular situation. You said that it probably would not have come to this point if it's just a family track. What if that family grew and then invited more people, and then residents started to complain? Would it have to come to this point also, where they'd have to get a PUD? Or some type of zoning change?
If it was just a family and they were just riding on it, they would not, I don't believe a PUD would be required in that case.
Okay, so I guess the residents, if this has just grown to a very large family operation,
but it is a,
they would just have to put up with the noise?
yeah, but it is a business entity, and that's, in my belief, one of the issues that triggers it to be a PUD, or requiring the PUD. And the other uses associated with, if it was not the motocross was not involved at all, but they wanted to do an RV campground, they would require the PUD. So it's a total project is triggering the PUD requirement.
I guess what I'm asking, maybe I'm not making my question clear, but if you had a family of 5 people and 3 of them rode motorcycles,
yeah.
Okay, and then I asked Uncle Billy to come down, he had 5 more, and it got to 50 out there riding. where would we be? I'm just asking that as far as, I know where we are now, but.
It's a gray area. There's not a clean
Okay.
cut. The reality is there's not a clean cut as to a number that triggers that if it's just a family-oriented effort.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, if I could assist also, just for a little history, we have had in the county situations where an individual built a motocross track on their property for a family member to train on. And that was brought as a code case for a couple of different reasons, one of which was that the development activity, they didn't obtain a permit for the development activity in creating the track. So, but they were also brought because it was a motocross track, and it was being used as a racing surface. So there is some history of that.
That answers my question. That was.
Have any questions?
Yes. Before you sit down, Mr. Brown, I noticed in the agreement and what have you, that they're asking for 20 travel trailer hookups or
RV sites.
RV sites. And the utilities for those were going to be a sewer system, but it said the water was going to be private well.
Yes.
How many sites do you have to have before you have to put in a water system? I thought it was only like 9.
I don't know off the top of my head. That's why and that'll be a determination by the Department of Health. But that is why the agreement stipulates that the water and sewer will have to be permitted by the Department of Health. So I don't know the exact number that triggers that, but it will have to be, the Department of Health is going to have to approve whatever it is to get those 20 sites in.
So, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Brad, again, I appreciate you coming today too. So if the commissioners felt like that the hours needed to be tweaked further in order to make this more palatable to the residents in the area, would you be willing to tweak those hours more?
Of course. You know that what I'm standing here before you is to say that, you know, these issues, and I don't want to say resolved, but we can adapt, right? Both on our side, which would be, you know, the training aspect, and trying to be good neighbors. I mean, I think we're beyond that. You know, I think the damage is done. I get it, but I'm just offering an olive branch to say, hey, you know, this is on me. I know, I get it. And the reason being the noise became an issue this year is because, you know, those two elements, you know, making that other course on the dry piece of property on the east, and putting the starting gate facing the woods, and there you go. It was like throwing gasoline on an open flame.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've got one more question. Mike, I don't know if you can answer this or not. I guess access would be off of Milliken Road.
Yes.
It does say it's a county-maintained road. Is it a Class 1? Because it is dirt, isn't it?
Yeah, it is clay, and it's county maintained.
Do you know if it's maintained? Is it a Class 1 or a Class 2? It's 1.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may we
Yes,
take
sir.
a 3-minute break?
We most certainly can. Let's take a 3-minute recess. We'll now reconvene.
Time to dig into it. It wants to work, I'll say that. You can hear it, feel it. Put a hammer out.
I'm going to open it for public comment for or against, but I know that there's citizens in the audience right now that really aren't affiliated with this particular subject. They're not, they don't live in the area, they're not part of the business, but I know they want to make they have a comment to make, so I'm going to open it now for 3 minutes on those that want to speak, and it's not specifically on this subject because they don't live out there. So, is there anyone that would like to speak?
Yeah, so to clarify, in a quasi-judicial matter, interested parties are considered the applicant, staff, and neighbors that are directly impacted by the proposal. They should be allowed as much time as necessary to present their testimony and whatever facts they need presented on the record. Non-interested parties are just general members of the public that wish to express an opinion on the matter, and those can be limited to 3 minutes.
Okay, so if there's anyone that would like to express their opinion, that is not, okay. Otherwise, on the 3 minutes, they would be held to 3 minutes. Those that are interested parties will have, of course, more than 3 minutes. So if there is none that want to, okay. Please, your name, your address, and limit to 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Mary A. Sheffield. I'm a resident on Milliken Road.
Then you're an interested party. You
Yes,
can,
sir.
Okay.
All of us.
Hold on just a second. This would be just for anybody who's not really on Milliken Road. Okay. So you are not limited to 3 minutes, and you state your name and address again.
My name is Mary A. Sheffield. I would like to say good morning and thank you, gentlemen, for listening. This is agricultural residential. The road that we live on has been turned into a lime rock road. And we get all this dust. We've got a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. They don't adhere to that. Whenever they redid West River Road, they brought the crushed asphalt around there. They laid it out. It wasn't long before we got potholes, and they came back and covered it with lime rock. We get the dust when they're going. We get the dust when they're coming back. And when my husband mows grass, he's covered in lime rock dust that's settled in our field. I can stand at the kitchen window and wash dishes, and the dust is coming to my front porch. We live a quarter of a mile from Palmetto Bluff Road on Milliken, and we live about 150 feet or a little better, but you can still get, I can't even go to the mailbox because I'll get covered up with lime rock dust when these vehicles are going back and forth. And these are the kids that are going back and forth to the track. My question is, do they have an ambulance down there when they're down there running? I hear these kids at 11 o'clock at night out there running those bikes. We get woke up at night. We have sick people that live on that road. We had to get 2 ambulances to get one of the ladies down there here a few months ago. My question is, sirs, these kids that drive trucks are old enough to have a license. Why aren't these kids working instead of out there on the dirt track? I understand kids want to be kids. I was a kid myself. I've been working since I was a kid. We have a large volume of traffic from this dirt track. This can be heard in a radius of about 3 miles or better. I'm not the only one. It's all these people that have joined me today. We can't stop these people from going too fast. I've even asked the law to help us. That's 25 miles an hour, and some of them drive 50 and 60 miles an hour. And they're carrying dirt bikes. So we know they're in a hurry to get there. They're tearing up our roads. Like I said, we get the dust. We have a woman and her sons and dog, she's almost been hit. Like I said, I go to the mailbox, I get covered in lime rock dust. We've even stopped school buses from flying through there. We called and asked them to slow them down. We stopped a lot of people coming up and down that road, even kids with the dirt bikes, and they just laugh at us. We're the residents. I appreciate Mr. Harvey saying property privacy. I was born and raised in Putnam County. I've been here almost 73 years. And as long as I can remember, you've had to have a permit for everything you've done. Electrical, building, you gentlemen know this. And that's what I don't understand. These people are moving in here. They're making all kind of racket for all of us. We have people that still work. We have people that are sick that get woke up from these dirt bikes. We are the residents of Milliken Road. And I certainly appreciate your time, and I certainly appreciate your consideration, whatever your decision is. Thank you.
Thank you. Before anybody else comes up here, I have 2 cards. So I have Mary Sheffield, okay, and Susan Moore. Now, you don't have to have a card, but since they had filled out a card, I was going to have them come up first.
Good morning. My name is Susan Moore, M-O-H-R, and I live at 508 Milliken Road. And we chose to live in Putnam County. We chose to move here. We originally bought property on Palmetto Bluff. Right after we were first married, we were working in Jacksonville, both my husband and I. My grandfather had owned property down here. My parents moved down here after I graduated from high school. And then when we had our first child, my mama wanted her grandson to be closer to her. So we were going to build a house on Palmetto Bluff. After we had come down and we were staying with my parents, Palmetto Bluff was a very busy road. So we chose to sell that property and buy property on Milliken Road. It was a nice dirt road. We have raised 3 boys there. Our youngest was born in 2001 too. So he's a senior in high school this year. We've homeschooled. Our boys learned to write, carrying what we call the snake stick, going up and down the road, writing their ABCs. We have enjoyed living on Milliken Road. It is a quiet road. The neighbors are very nice, sweet. They know our family. They know our children. We did not know that there was a business at this dirt bike track. We knew there was a dirt bike track down there, and we've heard it, but the noise has not bothered us where we live at on Milliken Road. What has bothered us, and what we have called the sheriff's department, because we did not know there was a business down there, we have complained and complained and complained to the sheriff's department about the volume of traffic on our road. It has increased. It is morning, noon, and night. It is big 4-wheel drive trucks. It is trucks with trailers. As Ms. Sheffield said, the speed limit on Milliken Road is 25 miles an hour. It's posted when you get there, but because of the lime rock, if you go 25, it throws a huge cloud of dust. And I think it's ironic that they put in an irrigation system to put the dust down on the track, but they're very inconsiderate about the dust they raise when they come down the road. I walk a dog and my neighbor's dog and my children, and I'll walk with us. I have personally been passed by these 4-wheel drive trucks with these dirt bikes on them close enough I could have reached out and touched them without them slowing down. My dogs are not on a leash. I make them sit beside me, and they still do not slow down, even though they clearly see us. One of my major concerns is our middle child, who's 21, is autistic. He likes to walk up and down the road with us, but he has a fear, and his fear is butterflies. And if he is not close by when a butterfly comes, he screams, he takes off running. He does not stop to look to see if somebody's coming. And sometimes he likes to go walk down the road by himself. I had felt comfortable with him doing that because most everybody on our road knows Thomas, knows not to expect him to stay where he's at, that if something happens, he'll move, and to watch out for him and to pass him cautiously, but not so with these strangers that are coming up and down our road. And I don't, you know, they talk about Hogwaller, and I'm glad they brought up Hogwaller because Hogwaller is on Highway 310. A highway. Milliken Road is not a highway. You need to check and see the volume of traffic that is coming in and out of our road. It has increased dramatically. We walk morning, we walk in the evening. In the wintertime when it's cool, we even walk at noon. There is just, you just would not believe the volume of traffic where it's constant. It's in and out and in and out. And since they don't have a gas station, and as far as I know, motorbikes run on gas, I assume they're making gas runs in and out and up and down the road. And I would appreciate, you know, I feel like they kind of snuck it in on us because until y'all had the last meeting, if our neighbors that are complaining about the noise had not come door to door and brought us a copy of what they had, we still would not know that that's what's going on down there because our good neighbors down there have not informed any of us that live on Milliken Road that they're impacting. They have not given us any plans. They have not told us what their plans are. They have been very rude and inconsiderate about that, and I appreciate y'all taking the time to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Come on up. Good afternoon.
How you doing, buddy?
You're pretty close.
My name is Jerry Howisher. I live at 224 Bostwick Cemetery Road, and my fence borders the property that we're debating here today, talking about today. I've heard these motorcycles run for quite a while. I used to ride bikes and enjoyed it. I really did. One of the reasons I moved to where I'm at, and I think there's some people in this that I'm looking at up here know where I'm at, is because of that area. It's quiet. It's been quiet for a long time. The berm situation, I'm not buying it. Mr. Leary says, if not here, where? But there's a lot of property south of the county line, including the county line. And there's maybe 500 foot from his fence line would be a good place to start. I have concerns, not only myself, my neighbors, of the constant noise. I'm hearing the noise problems with the traffic, which never even entered my mind because I'm not on Milliken Road. I'm right behind the track. There's also, we have a cemetery right there, pretty close to everyone that's in this room. It's Monday through Friday that they bury people, even on Saturdays. It'd be hard to sometimes maybe get that message across to the families when you're listening to this noise and disturbance. I have a problem with it. My personal feelings is I'm glad they have a business. I wish they'd have permitted it like the rest of us has permitted anything we've had to do in this county, or go to our commissioners for help, which we all have done here. I'm gonna give you straight up, I don't want it there. I have concerns. I've got family there. I moved. My friends come over and say, hey, this is a quiet place. I like to keep it that way. I've been here a long time. I know a lot of you guys here. And pretty much that's all I got to say. I'll give my neighbors time to talk.
Thank you.
My name is Matthew Saunders. I live at 216 Bostwick Cemetery Road. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. Part of one of the reasons why I moved out to Palatka, predominantly Putnam or Bostwick, was because of the fact of it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's a place where I can relax. Whenever I get off work, and for the longest time, I worked 2 to 10. I was a nighttime employee. So whenever I got home, it was 11 o'clock at night. Whenever they're running dirt bikes at 7 o'clock in the morning, that wakes us up. I need my sleep. And you can apologize for the sleep all you want. I'll accept your apology whenever you can.
Excuse me. Direct everything to us, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm very upset about this
That's
because
okay to be upset. Just direct everything to us.
it comes in originally, I understand, as a family thing. But to do anything, like we've said, you need a permit. So to come in after the fact and say, oh, we're sorry, that's just do it first, ask for apologies later. That does not work. It's not acceptable. You know, we have lives, we're out here, we have things that we need to do, and we can't do it if we can't properly sleep. You know, and as far as the traffic, we see the traffic on Palmetto Bluff. There's a lot of speeding up and down that road. There's a lot of road rage up and down that road now. I get passed. The speed limit is 45 miles an hour on Palmetto Bluff, and I get passed by trucks with dirt bikes in the back. That road should not even be 45 miles an hour. I do 35 sometimes whenever I'm coming home late at night, and that's a comfortable speed. There's no reason to go any faster than that down that road. There has been zero consideration for the people that live there, and I live right next to the cemetery, and I have passed while there has been a funeral going on, and all you can hear is dirt bikes. As far as this only being an issue for 8 months, I didn't say anything because I was a custodian at elementary school. What is my recourse? Am I going to call the cops? I live out in the middle of Bostwick. It's going to take them over 2 hours or more to get there, and I don't want to waste their time whenever we have real crime in Putnam County. The noise has been a personal issue, but it has been more than 8 months. My friend built his car out at my house 1.5 years ago, and they made complaints about the noise, and he had been out there prior and talked about how lovely of a place it was. So just because I wasn't complaining and yelling at the top of my lungs about the noise 8 months ago doesn't mean that we have not heard it in the 3 years prior. And to blame it on Mother Nature is just a scapegoat. It is their fault. If a motorcycle comes from a manufacturer at 98 decibels and they're out here saying that we want to run up to 115 decibels, what is the purpose of running your bike louder during training? And as far as the whole entire industry being electric within 3 years, I would like to see statistical data to prove that. Because we have had electric cars for quite a long time, and do you see electric cars in NASCAR? Do you see that? If we do not have full electric dirt bikes on that track within 3 years, will they close down? And the only other thing that I would like to know is, if this is approved today, what reassurances do we have in the future that 6 months down the road they say, well, we got everything that we need, we got our PUD, we got all of our agreement, and then they rip the mufflers off the bikes again? What recourse are we going to have if you do approve it? If they go ahead and break these rules that they're setting forth, because I do not believe that they will continue to be followed. And if there was a respect for the people, they would have went out and they would have made sure ahead of time who they were impacting and see what they could do instead of just waiting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, County Commissioners. My name's Bo Haddon. I live at 258 Bostwick Cemetery Road. I am 100% opposed of this illegal racetrack being turned legal by the rezoning of their property. This area is agricultural, and they knew it when they bought it. Then they tried to sneak the racetrack in. I looked in 4 states before I discovered beautiful Palatka, Florida, and decided to retire here and call Palatka my new home, my new and final home. I am now 62 years of age. What I was looking for was peace and quiet, privacy and seclusion in my senior years for my wife and I, who recently passed away, my dogs and my puppies. I'm a dog breeder. A place where no one would be bothered by my dogs or bother me about them either. I found this here in Palatka. To date, I have spent over $1.2 million that I have receipts for on buying my properties and buildings, building my homes, all with local contractors, and I am not finished yet. I wanted to support my community, Although I had outside contractors anxious for my jobs for less money, I stayed local to support my community. All this work was all done with proper permits and also includes having a business license for my kennel with the county and 2 LLCs with the state of Florida. I had a 10-acre, 8-foot-high game fence built around my house before I located here so I could have my dogs run free and enjoy the tranquil outdoor environment that Palatka has to offer and still be a responsible dog owner and never have my dogs disturb my neighbors. That fence cost me $23,000. Well worth it. I have never had any complaints about my dogs to this day. It was important to me to be a trouble-free, good neighbor from the start. As far as the owner of the illegal racetrack goes, he is not a good neighbor. His spokesperson, Mr. Leary, stated at the Putnam County Planning Commission hearing on 7/11/2018 that the owner, who did not even show up for that hearing, has searched for 4 years and done extensive research before buying here in Palatka. So that means he had to know they needed permits and zoning to change to operate the illegal racetrack. If they wanted to be a good neighbor, as Mr. Leary claims, they would have proceeded legally and obeyed our laws here in Palatka, Florida, USA. They opened up this illegal racetrack with no concern of our laws or the people who live here. Sure, why not? They live in Sweden and don't have to hear this noise pollution, but they made us endure it and suffer. It is so loud, I even hear it inside my cinder block home. There is no escaping the winding, shrill noise of these machines all day long. I'm home all day long. How could any child do homework over that constant noise? After 3 years of illegal operations, they were ordered by the county to stop the racetrack activity, but disregarded our rules and laws again. It was only when enforcement physically went there and forced them to stop is when they did it, for now. I have always believed that a person's action will reveal their true intentions. This person has demonstrated to me by their actions that they will do whatever they please with no regard to our laws or neighbors, only acting and proceeding correctly after they have gotten caught and are forced to do so. This is not the definition of a trustable person or good neighbor. By the way, they are not our neighbors. They live in Sweden and only plan to come here on a few short visits per year, according to Mr. Leary. At the last council hearing on 7/11, Mr. Leary, on behalf of his client, offered to build a 12-foot earthen berm and plant trees to block this noise pollution. Milliken Road is at 30 feet sea level. The families on Bostwick Cemetery Road are at 85 feet sea level. This is a difference of 55 feet in elevation. Is this illegal racetrack going to build a berm 55 feet high and then add another 12 feet to that in reference to planting trees as a noise buffer? My house and some of my other neighbors have at least 88 acres or more of land between us and this illegal racetrack. I have planted pines on my land now. Each acre has 600 trees planted approximately. That is a total of 52,800 trees already between that illegal racetrack and my home, and the noise is really loud and constant. it takes no less than 1,000 trees per acre minimum to reduce noise levels. Are they going to plant 400 times 88 trees? That would be another 35,200 more trees in between us and them. And how long will it take for those trees to mature and block the noise? 10, 15, 20 years? I'm 62 years old now. And what about all the people on the east side of the illegal track, on Milliken Road and to the north? Where is the concern for them? Most of the people I spoke with were senior citizens. Don't they deserve peace and quiet in their golden years after a lifetime of hard work and paying taxes? How are they going to be protected from the constant noise pollution? No mention of their needs were ever addressed. Don't they also count? There is also concern for the safety and road condition of the illegal track patrons have created traveling on Milliken Road. I have been told the road is being torn up badly, creating large amounts of dust and a hardship for the seniors to keep their houses clean. And the potholes creating dangerous road conditions. And there are people who have walked Milliken Road for over 20 years who lived there that are now concerned and afraid to do so because of the speeding traffic. And then there's the very sensitive issue about the Bostwick Cemetery, which is on the road I live on, as well as some of my neighbors here, west of the illegal racetrack. The people who live in the immediate area are directly affected by this illegal track, but the whole county is also affected by this illegal track because of the Bostwick Cemetery. They have already been complaints that the motorcycle noise interfered with some services at the cemetery. Mr. Lear stated on 7/11/2018, the track would run Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. When are the people in the county supposed to use the cemetery? This cemetery is a sacred place and has always been peaceful and quiet, where people come to show their respect for loved ones who have passed on. In closing, I must say Palatka is the quiet and tranquil, beautiful rural area that I was looking for. But if this illegal track is approved, that will all change for all of us here. I am also concerned about drinking and drug use at these type of activities, along with trespassing and stealing. If the track was here when I was looking to buy property, I would never spent one penny here and kept on looking elsewhere. All the families here are affected by this illegal track, have spent many millions of dollars accumulatively as a group and paying our taxes to our county. If approved, this racetrack will completely rob us all of the quality of life we moved here for, and our homes and property value will take tremendous economical losses. County Commissioners, please protect our quality of life and the value of our homes and property. What they did here was illegal and wrong without any concern for the surrounding people who do actually live here. This is only a 2-time-a-year visit to the USA hobby for them. This is our homes. These new proposals they have will not make this wrong or right. I don't believe they're going to work. Everyone must obey our laws and rules, including visitors. There's a lot of places that they can go to put their motorcycle track. This was the wrong place. If they would have came to us first, we would have expressed that. They wouldn't have had to wasted their money here. They could have went somewhere else what would have been appropriate. This is not appropriate. There's too many factors involved. This affects too many people in a very negative way. It's really selfish of them to even try to do this to us. This is a hobby for them. We live here. They don't need to, they won't hear this where they live, but they want us to listen to it every single day, all day long. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Let down a little bit.
Okay. My name is Connie Parrish. I live at 230 Bostwick Cemetery Road. I'm directly behind it. First, I want to say this is supposed to have been a private motocrossing thingy. I have personally seen the, what do you call yourself?
She needs to
Well,
talk to
anyway.
us, Mr. Chairman.
The trainer at the Dollar General buying beer, smelled badly of pot, inviting the younger kids that come in the store to go down there and ride with them. Okay, I personally don't want my kids down there. And we're talking about the cemetery. I have personally, you know, he giggled saying it was his fault. I personally take offense to that because in August, my mother passed away. That's all I heard. I did not appreciate it. So I know that the families that is at the cemetery, what they're dealing with, that's all you hear. And it is not just certain times of the day and certain times of the week. It's all week long from crack of dawn till past and way in the night. I hear it clearly. I try and go inside. I can't get away from it. My windows rattle. My grandbaby was around September of last year. She was running 104 temperature. All night long, we had took her to the emergency room, finally got her to sleep. 6:45, they start up again. She come alive. She hadn't even been asleep 10 minutes. Scared her to death. So I had to deal with that for a couple hours. They are not considerate to the neighbors. I personally do not want them there because they have no respect. They say they'll do this, but I promise you they don't. They run when they're not supposed to be. I live there, I know. I've moved there for peace and quiet. I've lived there all my life. My family has lived there all my life, or all their life. We grew up there. They did not ask us how we felt. I would not have agreed to this. I mean, I know some of y'all might have traffic where y'all live, but think of it if it was at y'all's place. Would y'all really want to live with that? I don't. And I just, you know, for the sake of the people that has to go to the cemetery, you know, you can't say, well, they're riding from this time to this time. Let's have the funeral this time. You can't do that. So out of respect the people that has lost their loved ones, you know, they want that peace and quiet where they can hear that and they can go and sit and visit with their loved ones and not hear this, because I'm telling you, it is extremely loud. And like they said the last time, they supposed to done had the muffled things. It did not work because Mr. Lurie said they had them on there last time we was here. It did not work. They was just as loud. We've got trees, piles of trees between us. It does not buff it. It's like they're right there in my backyard. It literally feels like I could step out and look at them jumping. It's like they're that close. It's very annoying. But, I mean, I really hope y'all take in consideration of the residents that's wanting the peace and quiet. And I thank y'all for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Carrie Kelly. I live at 184
Closer to that mic.
Bostwick Cemetery Road. I bought my property in 2007, and I purchased it for specifically the peace and quiet. I also work from home. So I travel about 20% of the time and work from home about 80% of the time. I work for IBM. So I'm on the phone consistently all day, different hours because different time zones and whatnot. Like I said, I purchased that property for peace and quiet. I've added multiple buildings, a barn, I have horses. I've followed all the, permitting and whatnot to get things approved before building. It's so frustrating because I guess it started in December where I could really hear it. We've always heard some sort of noise out there, never could really figure out what it was, but in December, I messaged Connie to ask her, if somebody had gotten a new dirt bike down there or something was going on, but she told me about the Milliken Road business out there. So I actually drove out there myself and spoke to, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 gentlemen, and you could tell they were from a different country. They all had beer. They were sitting around in plastic chairs at that outbuilding that apparently is supposed to be a home or converted to a home. I spoke with them, and I asked them if this had been approved, and they said, yes, this has been approved. Nobody on Milliken Street has had an issue with this at all, which is obviously not correct. But I can't even describe the noise. I can hear it inside. I've actually had to move my office elsewhere because I can't be on the phone with all the background noise. I've had people on conference calls ask me, what's the noise in the background? So to protect myself and my job, I've had to move my office. It's been so nice going out there now that it's been quiet for some time since they quit racing. The deer have come back. There weren't any deer out there for I can't tell you how long with the noise. It's like Connie said, it's like it's in your front yard. And they're that far away. I have little to no faith based on their past, everything that they've done thus far, that they're going to follow these rules. As soon as this thing gets approved, they're going to be taking. She said they already had the mufflers on, the silencers, I guess, but they're going to. They're going to get away with what they can, and it's just going to escalate and escalate. And I feel like who's going to be there to actually make sure that, they're following these rules that are put in place. I have little to no faith. Code enforcement went out there multiple times. I called them myself, and some of the other folks have called them. We called them daily, had them come out. They went down and told them to shut down. They were not supposed to be running these bikes. They still ran the bikes, even after code enforcement went out there and asked them to stop. They still ran the bikes. So they can't use the whole excuse of, we didn't know about the permits and this and that, because they knew then when code enforcement went out there that they had to stop, and they still raced the bikes. We had to listen to that. Like I said, I purchased that place for the peace and quiet. I work a very stressful job. I feel I can't escape it. I want to be able to go outside after work and be able to enjoy, and I do not mind doing the work out there that I do, but I do not want to have to listen to that noise. It's maddening. It is absolutely maddening, and I have no faith that these people will listen to anything put into place out there, just zero. And it's not fair to us. I lived in St. Augustine before I bought my property there. I spent, I drove everywhere. I drove in North Jacksonville. I drove south of here trying to find the perfect place where I did not have to have noise. And, this was for my horses. I wanted them to have a peaceful life, and myself included. But we're being forced to listen to this now, and it is not fair to us. We purchased this agricultural property for a reason, and they come in and want to change what was already zoned as agricultural. Why should we have to listen to that? They need to take it somewhere where nobody has to listen to it. And as being compared to Hogwaller is 1 weekend a month, and that's it. If it was 1 weekend a month, I can deal with that. But every single day and the hours that they're saying that they run, it's nonstop. I think I've heard them take a lunch break between like 12 and 12:45. On a few occasions. They run on Sundays, even though they say they don't. They're on Sundays. I actually had someone stop. I was outside staining my fence. I had somebody stop and ask me what the hours were because they were trying to have a service for their deceased relative, and they couldn't even hear the service. They were trying to ask me who owned this operation, and that was probably in January or February timeframe. So it's like they were saying, it's affecting everybody in the county. And how much business growth have we seen or money's being spent in the community for the past 3 years that they've been here? Do we have any sort of increase in profit and whatnot because of their use of the track? if we're not gonna see any more growth from what we have now, unless they're planning on having, you know, more riders, but 15 at a time, I think we probably hear close to that now. I can't even imagine any more than that. And the burns and all that is not gonna work. It's like I said, it's frustrating, and I don't know what I'm gonna do if that is approved, if this is approved, because it's just, like I said, it's just, there's no way to make sure that they're gonna follow the rules. And I just feel like we're just being forced to have to listen to this, and it's not fair. It's not fair to us at all. So I appreciate you listening to my side.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm U.S. Army Edward John Moore, Sergeant Major, retired. I've lived out on Milliken Road for the last 24 years. It's 508 Milliken Road. Of that time that I've lived out there, most of it I've been a geographical bachelor, serving my country wherever it was, Oconus or Conus. And my wife would be at home supporting the family, raising my children. Milliken Road's been a nice place to raise kids. Certainly has. Over the last couple of years, just before I'm getting ready to retire, I would come home and find out, well, what in the world is going on down here? This has turned into a crazy road. Traffic's just horrendous. You know, we get these fifth wheels rolling up and down the road during the day. I can only imagine what it's going to be like if this motocross track, or whatever you want to call it, type circus event with concession opens up. And we'll have a traffic rolling up and down the road on a regular basis. Disregard to the posted speed limit. I've watched it. I get out on the road. I try to slow it down to no avail. The owners of the property, I don't know them from Adam's house cat. They ever stop by on the road to say hello or whatever? Certainly not. Well, I can only think of what the county and what the residents of this area are going to be confronted with when it comes to taxes. So now this is something that'll definitely increase. Some of us will be on fixed income. Okay, now we're going to afford it, or are we just going to go out there and do, as what some might think, post out a stake for sale and move, because we don't want to deal with it. Okay, the concessions to the road, the county's going to have to pay the price on that, and it goes back to the taxpayer. Palmetto Bluff Road, that's a very dangerous road. If you've been down there, and if you come to the intersection of 17, how many family members would we lose due to traffic? How many more will get killed on that road? The same thing with West River Road. It's very dangerous. It's only a 2-lane road. And, I applaud the Sheriff's Department. They have a busy job, and they have a large area to cover within Putnam County. But, I would see that if it was at your back door and you were to have to put up with it, to know that, when is EMS going to be down there if they have an accident out on the track? Are they hiring their own EMS to come out there? Will the fire department down the road be able to come in on time in case there's a fire or whatever with the traffic? And gentlemen, that's all that I have. Would you take that in consideration? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Jeff Foster. I live at 146 Bostwick Cemetery Road. We bought our home there about 7.5 years ago. I didn't hear that noise then. I sure don't want to hear it now. I think if that was next to any of your homes, you wouldn't want to hear it either. And I know that, they didn't do what was right in the beginning, totally understand that. But they want to be good neighbors. But when they were told this is irritating the neighborhood, they didn't stop. They're saying that they're going to stop now and they're going to do all these things. They're going to abide by their hourlies, that they put up there. They're going to put these suppressors in. Totally understand, sound really good. I mean, if I was on your side, yeah, great job. You guys are doing wonderful. But what have they done to prove that that's what they're going to do? That's a question I'm sure you're asking yourself. Once this gets approved, how are we going to stop them? How are we going to, is the county going to have to hire somebody to go out there and monitor this? Do we have to listen to this until a point where we can't stand it anymore and then you're getting more phone calls? So the sheriff's department has already got enough to do. Now we're going to have to call up with these menacing things because they were told not to have not to have but one RV out there now. I drove by there 2 days ago. There's 5 RVs out there. I thought they said that, there's only supposed to be 1. So, and then you turn around and you say, this is a private park. And just a minute ago, the trainer was standing right here and he said, well, he brings his boy out there to ride and he'll just bring his whole baseball team out there to ride. Well, just a minute. This is a private park. Does that mean private means you pay $5 and you can come in? So all of a sudden, it's not a private park. It's a park you pay to come and ride. And that's what we believe we've been listening to for a long time. And just what gets me is, you keep saying this good neighbor business. A good neighbor listens to your neighbor, listens to the neighbor. They did not listen when they said, hey, this is really annoying. When I have neighbors, I live a long ways away, actually. If you look on Bostwick Cemetery Road from the cemetery, you come on back north, you go through the S turn, and that's where I live up there. And I'm telling you right now, on record, just like I heard over and over again, that it was very, very annoying. I could not hear it in my house, but when I went outside and wanted to sit around my swimming pool or have a barbecue or anything, this is what I hear. And who in their right mind wants to go to work all week long and put up with the crap that you got to put up with work, to make a living, to come home, and to now listen to it again? That's what I'm saying. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I'm just saying that we've got somebody here that's saying what you want to hear, but they're not going to fulfill what they're going to say. And you can just look at their actions and see. Because if I was running that track and somebody came to me and said, hey, it's so loud over there, and I mean, he's got his start gate over there, I would move that start gate way before we would even be sitting here today. If somebody said it's really noisy, oh, I just figured that out, that those woods aren't stopping it. But did they move the start gate? No, they left it there. They didn't move it. And then they say, and on my observation, just driving down Milliken Road looking, they've got jumps and ramps there that are 12 feet tall. It looks like it from the road. Of course, I didn't go on the property. So you're going to build a 15-foot berm, which was only supposed to be a 12-foot berm before, but he admitted that that's not really going to be enough. So now you're going to build a 12-foot berm, which would match the jumps that you have on there, which the bikes will then be up in the air. And when a bike goes up in the air, the noise just doesn't stop as soon as he hits airborne. They still got the accelerator wide open, and then it kicks off, otherwise you're going to blow your motor. I rode dirt bikes too. I don't mind. If that dirt bike would have been there, the racetrack would have been there, I never would have bought. But I enjoy my property, I love my neighbors, and I'm trying to be a good neighbor. That's why I'm here telling you that I can't see how you can approve it. He says there's no place else to put it. They didn't look. They looked for a cheap piece of property in Putnam County because it's the cheapest county around. That's it. But there's more property out there. And there is a thing, when you buy a piece of property, I've bought and sold property all my life, and you guys probably have too, due diligence. Has anybody ever heard of due diligence? When you buy a piece of property, before you buy it, you do your due diligence. One other point. A trainer said he has done this once before up north. Stood in front of a board just like yours. If he knew all this before, when he was out of state and he came here, why in the world didn't they come and stand before the board to get this approved prior to trying to push it over on everybody? We're looking at character here. You've got a lot of the neighborhood coming here. Not everybody, because everybody's got to work. But you're looking at character and these people. What is their character? What have you seen from their character? What have they provided you to believe one single thing that they've said? And you have people here from the neighborhood coming, taking their own personal time to try to make sure that their neighborhood stays the way that it is, being good neighbors, trying to be here, and they can tell you about 5 other neighbors that would want to be here, but they got to work. You would see a larger crowd here if this was at a different time. 7 o'clock in the evening, I'd pay your overtime to get you here to see how packed we could fill this room, to tell you of the noise. But my biggest thing is I couldn't imagine being in some of these other homeowners' spot and listening to that noise that I listen to at my house, to listen to what they have there. And any suppression, any amount, there's only going to be 15 riders. They want 15 riders there, but they want 20 RV sites. That doesn't add up to me. I've never seen one single trailer go down the road with one dirt bike on it. And we're only talking about dirt bikes. What about four-wheelers? We never addressed the four-wheelers. Are they going to be running four-wheelers at this park too? We're just talking motorcycles. So the motorcycles, we got 15, but four-wheelers we can run open amount. Hogweilers has four-wheelers, trucks, everything there. They don't make the same noise that a motorcycle does. Everybody knows it. You've all heard it. And I'd like to have, I wish I could have gone to a dealer, revved up a bike, took the recording of that, and brought it here and times it by 15 and let me have this conversation while that's going on. I don't think you'd be able to hear me. That's what I'm asking. Just think about it. Think about their character and what you're asking them to do. You're asking them to be a good neighbor, but they haven't proved it. But I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gary McDaniel, 140 Bostwick Cemetery Road. I live right in front of Jeff. I can hear the motorcycles all day, during the night, the same as he can. You walk outside, it's like it goes on 7 days a week. I personally don't want to hear it. You know, I don't like to go out my yard and have to hear something that's not going to go away. I mean, it's a never-ending thing, you know. People runs up and down my road with loud trucks, young boys and stuff. That's one time a day or something, or one time a week, you know. It's not something that goes on constantly, hours on end, you know. That's really, I mean, you've heard everything that everybody said. It's just something that, you know, we don't want to have to live with day in and day out. And I don't believe that these people's going to do what they say they're going to do. They're not going to have 15 motorcycles out here. They're going to have 15 today. Next week, they're going to have 20. You know, are they going to pave what about the people on Milligan Road? Are they going to build a berm all the way around this whole piece of property so they don't have to, you know, they can block the noise from Milligan Road and also Bostwick Cemetery Road? If I can hear it from my house, I can only imagine Mr. Jerry's house, you know, how well he can hear it. You know, it's got to be unbearable, especially, you know, when it goes on at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
would say good morning, but we've made it into the afternoon, so good afternoon, Commissioners. My name's George Young. I live at 205 Bostwick Cemetery Road. You've met a great deal of my neighbors. I live there as well. I live right across from Jerry, as a matter of fact. And I think if you didn't have an understanding previously, you should now. We're here about our homes. Mr. Leary's client's here about money. We're here about our property. Our homes, our way of life. A quality of life that's now been diminished. That's on the verge of the danger of being taken. Commissioner Harvey, you asked a question. If not here, then where?
That's right.
I got an answer for you. But it'll start with a question. If you could put anything you wanted to in Ag 2, why would we need a PUD? I believe, and I was not as well versed in this as Mr. Manning or my partner, Mr. Holmes, back there, but I believe a PUD, part of the reason for having a PUD is to figure out the reason as to where something like this can be compatible with the surrounding land uses. I think we've made it very clear. This PUD, if it were approved, would put something that is not compatible where it's currently located. I don't think it's up to me or my neighbors to tell you where this racetrack can go. I think that's up to the owners of the racetrack, is it not? Wasn't that part of his due diligence to figure that out to begin with? So I can't answer your question other than to tell you somewhere other than here. I can make plenty of suggestions. I can look at a map of this county. So Garden Road comes to mind. I think we've got one up there. Not a lot of neighbors around, plenty of rural area. In this particular area, you have people that have come to live, and they've made a choice. They've made a choice to live farther from towns, from cities, from the noise, but with that comes the choice to be away from conveniences. We've sacrificed something to be there. We were all here first. We did our due diligence when we moved there. There was no racetrack. We came there because it was a quiet community. We spent time meeting our neighbors. We spent time figuring out what we could do on this property. We've bought it. We've made something out of it. We've increased the value of the land. We have a neighborhood that has certain benefits, even though we sacrifice reasons to be there. Now, before you is an application for someone who doesn't even live in this county, doesn't even live in this country. And if I understood correctly, the trainer gave an address from St. Johns County, who want us to give up everything we chose about where we live so they can ride motorcycles. And quite frankly, that ought to be the answer to your question right there. That ought to end the discussion. This is about a quality of life. I understand that this is now our third go-around here. We've been before code enforcement, we've been before the special magistrate, prevailed there. We went before the planning commission. My neighbors and myself, again, expressed our views. And their position was, by the vote of, I believe it was 5-2, not to approve this. That's their recommendation to you. Every time we've gone to one of these meetings, Mr. Leary has then put forth a new set of, hey, we'll do this if we can get it done. Where was that in the beginning? This isn't about I'm trying to be a good neighbor. This is about I'm trying to do anything I can to get my business snuck in there, which, oh, by the way, it's been there for 3 years, which, oh, by the way, we have had a problem with the noise for 3 years. It took some time to figure out how we can handle it. Now we're here. But to say for the last 8 months this has only been a problem is a downright falsehood. I can tell you, as a matter of fact, my own personal experience, that over a year ago, I tried to stand on the porch, back porch of my property after it was built and have a conversation with my father at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. I couldn't. He said, I don't know what's going on here, but we got to go inside so we can talk. Because from a less distance from me to you he couldn't hear me because of the noise from the motorcycles that, oh, by the way, had been all day and constant. I've heard them at 6:30 p.m. on a Sunday, loud as they can be. But that's not what they testified when they ran. I've heard that the folks on Milliken Road are completely fine with this. How come you guys are? We didn't know you were there, we'd have talked to you. That's not what I heard today. I've heard we want to be good neighbors over and over and over. That's not how they have acted. And to come in here and say, oops, our mistake, are you kidding me? Not only does an owner have the obligation, this particular owner had the obligation to due diligence and his responsibility, and therefore the results of his actions are on him, not on my neighbors or myself. But you had the trainer admit he'd been through this process before. Okay, then you should have known this process was coming again. Other indicators, when code enforcement went out to them to shut them down, they found ways around it, or so they thought, and kept trying. That didn't work, hey, let's take it in front of the general magistrate. We'll get it through that way. That didn't work. We'll keep going. When does it end? Now they want to tell you that we can put these mufflers on the motorcycles. It takes us 30 seconds to put them on. I bet that means it takes them 30 seconds to take them off. Do you think someone who's come in here and testified contradictory to what all my neighbors and myself have experienced is willing now to follow the rules? Past performance, past behavior, best indicator of future performance. All they can do is predict. My neighbors and I can tell you exactly what's happened, and we have. Why then should anybody have any faith that this latest rounds, and again, it's a reaction. If they were so willing to do this and it's all hunky-dory, why didn't they come forward with this to begin with? Mufflers, electric motorcycles that we will not see anytime in the near future. We'll limit our hours. Contradictory about testimony there. I only need it Monday through Thursday. Oh, but when they were questioned, oh, but yeah, but then I got these people that come in and they do this with people. I thought this was a private business that they said they brought in folks who wanted to train from out of state and from out of the country. Then explain to me all the trucks running up and down my road, Palmetto Bluff and Milliken, which I've personally seen, with two, usually every one of them has two dirt bikes in the back, headed in that direction. Most of them with Putnam County tags or Clay County tags. That's not even out of state, barely out of county, much less out of the country. What I'm getting at is even if you put the best rules in place ever, you've got an enforceability issue. I understand there was some testing done on the mufflers. I wasn't there. Wonder if anybody here was there. Do we have anybody that can come in here and say, here's how it was tested, that the throttles are even revved? Anybody other than them that can verify it? Did anybody stand on my front porch while they were running those mufflers wide open, or those engines wide open with those mufflers on it, so I could verify whether or not I could hear the noise? No. They're not really willing to do this. That's clear. So you can't enforce this. You got two code enforcement officers. Last I checked, they usually weren't around on the weekends too. So anytime somebody just wants to pull one of those devices out of the muffler and run it loud, because that's what they really came here to do, or they decide to run on Sunday morning or Saturday night or late in the evening on a Thursday or Friday, and your code enforcement officers in Crescent City or Interlochen dealing with something else, how do you deal with it? Past performance and behavior, best indicator of future performance. It's going to happen. Most of the folks in my neighborhood, whether they mentioned it or not, business owners, former owners, work, the last thing in the world they want is for Putnam County to suffer economically. They're vested in. I'm vested in. I'm a business owner. If this county doesn't grow, my business doesn't grow. I can't support my family. We're invested in this place. But there is the right place and the right time for the right industry and the right business. Just because it might be a good idea and it might have a future doesn't mean that this is the right place. That's why there's a PUD. That's why we're all here. And what I'm telling you is, I don't oppose their business. I wish them luck and success. Great for them. And if it does something for the county, that's great too. Although I believe, and if we check with Mr. Manning, I don't think economic factors are a criteria in this, are they? Is the economic factor a criteria that you were to consider?
No.
No. So I would object to any economic testimony that's come in about the benefit, because you can't consider it for this. What we're saying is, due to the fact that it negatively impacts our quality of life, which we have told you all about in the last couple hours, and it does, it's severe. We're not talking about a loud noise. We're not talking about a train going by. We're not talking about a loud muffler on a truck. We're not even talking about road noise. What we're talking about is a high-frequency motorcycle noise that is constant. It has been constant from the minute the sun comes up, sometimes after the sun goes down, 7 days a week. And I don't think that's going to change. And you don't have any way of enforcing that it doesn't. That impacts our quality of life. That is not consistent and cannot be consistent with the neighborhood that we have with the surrounding land uses. Our position in this, same as your commission found when we were before them. I mean, one of the things you consider about, does it protect the neighborhood character and environmental concerns? It certainly would affect our neighborhood character. But the land use proposed within the PUD, is it compatible with the terrain and the existing plan uses of property surrounding the PUD? One of the factors to be considered, compatibility with the following factors: adjacent existing proposed uses, design of the development to avoid undue noise, odor, traffic, or other nuisances, and dangers to abutting property owners. Been a lot of talk about reducing the noise, although I think it's very clear that can't be enforced. But I heard nothing about reducing the traffic issues. I heard nothing about preventing Milliken Road from becoming so degraded that you can't get an ambulance down it to get somebody out, or a fire truck down it to rescue anybody or put out a forest fire, which, although this year wasn't a big deal, in previous years that area has been very susceptible to that. That endangers all of us. It's right here in your code. Does it enhance neighborhood design and encourage compatible and cooperative relationships between adjoining land uses? Absolutely not. The site of the PUD must be suitable for use in the manner proposed without hazards to persons, either on or off the site, from the likelihood of increased flooding, erosion, or other dangers. I think it's pretty clear there's some other dangers there. Way back when I was in law school, believe it or not, I paid attention in one of my classes. I had a Florida constitutional professor talking about quiet enjoyment. Most attorneys think of quiet enjoyment when it comes to leases, landlord-tenant law. But if you do a little looking in the Florida Constitution, you'll understand that quiet enjoyment is also the right to use the premises, particularly your residence, in peace without interference. Although it's often considered part of a lease, it also has to do with the with not having any interference or disturbance of quiet enjoyment, which is called a nuisance. In this case, what we have is a private nuisance. It's called noise, it's called traffic, it's called other dangers. I'd like for these folks to be able to find a home, I really would. I'd like for them to be able to find a place where they could be successful. But in order to do that, they're going to have to find somewhere that's different from where they're at. Because the testimony here today, and the testimony that was provided to your planning commission was very clear that their use is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and lands. There's been quite a bit of talk about the cemetery. My property is right across the road from the cemetery there on Bostwick Cemetery Road. Although, amazingly enough, I discovered a lot of people didn't know there's a cemetery on Bostwick Cemetery Road. It's not the largest cemetery in the world, but it's still an active cemetery. We see people there, buried there quite a bit. What I see when I pull in and out of my driveway or when I'm working on my fences or other areas of the property is I see a lot of people going there to grieve. A lot of people going there to visit the grave sites. Things my grandmother and mother used to do all the time, take me when I was a little kid. I can't tell you how it's affected them, this noise. The one place on earth you're supposed to find peace and quiet. It's there. There have been some references to Hogwaller. I think if you listen carefully, you'd understand how different this is from Hogwaller. Hogwaller went about their business a little different, did their due diligence, did the PUD to see if this was the place, if not somewhere else. That's not how it happened here. We're only here because they got caught, kept getting caught, kept getting beat, and kept morphing and twisting and turning until we got to here. That's not how it's supposed to work. As I understand it, this is not a permitted use, which is why we're here for the PUD. It's not a right. The Planning Commission understood this. They denied, or they recommended disapproval because of it. It's not compatible with surrounding land use. And this is a matter of exception. And part of that is to ensure this process, to ensure this is the right location and is compatible with the surrounding land, the surrounding neighborhood, surrounding people. It's been explained to me by those wiser and smarter than me that your property rights end where your neighbor's property line begins. Now you flip that around. They're coming across my property line, they're coming across my neighbor's property line with noise, with traffic, all kinds of problems. And yet not one viable solution that you can enforce that would make this compatible is on the table. This particular location is not compatible with the surrounding land use. I can't think of any sufficient restriction that you could enforce to allow it to coexist with surrounding uses. By my count, at least 14 of your citizens of this county, who you represent, have showed up here today. I know of others. Unfortunately, a lot of them had medical appointments or jobs. They couldn't make it to this meeting. Wish they could have. You'd have heard more of the same. These are the people you represent. They have come here and asked you not to approve this PUD. They've come here and explained to you why. This is not compatible with our way of life, not in this particular location. I don't think there's been anybody here that's denied the fact that they're a business, they should have the opportunity to succeed. But every one of them has told you why it won't work here. It's not our responsibility to go about the process the right way. That was the owner of this property, the owner of this business. That was their job. If they failed in their due diligence, myself and my neighbors are not the ones to pay for that mistake. They can characterize it however they want to. In today's world, you can say whatever you want. I judge people by how they act. We've clearly demonstrated to you they didn't act as good neighbors. They didn't come in here with the intent of following the laws. They didn't come in here with the intent of putting mufflers on their motorcycles. They didn't come in here with the intent of making their neighbors happy. That only happened, or those suggestions only happened after they got caught and got stopped time after time after time. Do you think that's going to change? No. You can't enforce this. If there were a way that their suggestions with some modifications could be enforced, you would probably find that my majority of myself and my neighbors would agree to it. But you can't. Therefore, it's not compatible at this location. Therefore, you shouldn't approve this PUD. I heard statements like the economic impact is overwhelming. You've already heard my objection to any discussion about the economic impact. I can go down my list. I could be up here for hours. I think we've probably spent enough time. I heard they were told they never needed a PUD. Again, ignorance of the law. I think first day of law school. Actually, I think my father, when I was a kid, put that one in my head. That just don't fly. I do have a question, though. Actually, I got a bunch of questions, but one I would propose. When we were talking about the RV sites, are those permanent? Are they not permanent? If they are permanent, even if they're not called permanent, does that change the density? Does that change yet another factor in here? You got RV sites, you got roads, you got safety issues. I don't know the difference, honestly, between a Class 1 and Class 2 county road, but I can tell you that road's bad. I've driven on it enough to know that I avoid it at all costs. Now it's even worse, referring to Milliken Road. The traffic on Palmetto Bluff has increased exponentially over the last 3 years. Now, not all of it's attributed to this place. We've got growth, we've got people moving in. But it can't handle this kind of traffic. There are enough dangers on that road already. We're trying to raise our families and live a life. Again, another negative impact that I've heard no way to mitigate, because despite their claims that this is just going to be some folks from out of state or out of the country, you've heard here today that in fact, it's people from all over the county and nearby coming on in with their motocross bikes. That traffic increases, the fifth wheelers, the motorhomes, everything that comes with it. It's there. Mother Nature didn't cause the noise out there. Mother Nature didn't cause the problem. Mother Nature may have amplified it. Those of us that live on Bostwick Cemetery Road are fortunate enough to live on a ridge. If you do a little topographical looking, it's kind of strange. Out of nowhere, there's a nice high ridge in the county. One of the reasons why I chose to live there. Don't have to worry about all this rain right now. But noise travels upward, especially when it's got a nice grade to go travel right up. Again, you can't do anything with that. You're going to build a 50-foot berm? Maybe. That's not realistic. Again, a reason why this is not the right location. We talked about the times. Like I said, go on and on. I've heard 15 or more bikes at one time riding on that track. I don't care how many of those, whatever you want to call them, that you can screw in 30 seconds. Screw them back out in 30 seconds. You put in a motorcycle. You put 15 or more of those at one time and you still got a noise problem. I can have a conversation with you right now at this level. You bring 14 more of me up here having the same conversation at this level, pretty loud, annoying, and overwhelming. Even worse with a motorbike. You got a frequency issue. I understand what the rule is in the code regarding decibels. Decibels isn't where this ends. It's a frequency issue. And if you do any research on motorcycle mufflers, spark arresters, motorcycles in general, you'll hear them talk about frequency. And frequency is a problem. It's a noise that you just can't control by having some type of decibel count. You're not going to be able to enforce it anyway. All they can do is predict what type of business they're going to have, their economic impact, what they will do to mitigate things. But my neighbors and I have gotten up here and testified to you and told you the truth. We've told you about what has really happened and is happening. Past behavior, best indicator of future performance. On top of that, I don't think anybody could logically say that you have the resources to enforce any of the suggestions that have now been made. Even if they were sufficient, even if they were, and I'm not saying they are, to be sufficient to make the use that they have proposed compatible with the surrounding land, you couldn't enforce it. And we'll be back, I can assure you, if you can't enforce it. What other choice would we have? We shouldn't have to worry about enforcement of an issue like this. We are your citizens. We live in this county. We've elected you to represent us. We're here and explain to you why we don't want this particular PUD to be approved, why we don't think this is the appropriate location. If not here, then where? Not mine to answer. That was the owner's to find out before he put it there. They're here about the money. We're here about our property and our way of life. I appreciate your time. We'd ask you that you would deny this PUD application. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to approach the bench, speak? Okay.
Correct. Rebuttal opportunity for the applicant's
Okay.
agent.
Before you step up there, Mr. Leary, absolutely no one else to speak? Okay, I'm gonna close that section. Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, well, several issues that were brought up that were incorrect, and let me just go back to the original provision. The families of the owners of the property started this as a family track. It expanded from there. Obviously, they didn't know they needed to have it permitted. All the other buildings, the electrical, plumbing, all of that was permitted and approved by the county. Everything out there has been permitted with exception of the track. Mr. Young said that it's not compatible. Mr. Brown showed you specifically on the slide that said motocrosses are compatible in ag zoning, in ag land use classification. When you talk about due diligence, the property owners out there bought agricultural land in agricultural zoning. They didn't buy residential. They didn't buy rural residential. They didn't buy agricultural residential. They bought ag. Agriculture in that area, you could permit it for private landing strips, sawmills, bird deprivation, guns going off with blueberries and grapes. I mean, all those things are permissible uses. So, there's a reason why motocross is designated for this particular zoning and this particular land use by your comprehensive plan. There's been no activity, none, in 5 months out there. When they talk about the character of the owners and the operator, when code enforcement came out and I was retained to try to go through, the staff said that we needed a PUD simply because not only were we going to have a motocross, we were going to have RV sites for those utilizing the motocross to use. Otherwise, we would have just had a simple special exception for motocross. But even in a special exception, you have conditions. So there's really, that's semantics. They talked about wildlife. I've been out there several times, deer and turkey all over the property. We also, I think, are being blamed for something that's occurring, the growth out there. In that area, there's thousands of acres of, timber and rural lands. We're not riding. We can't ride at night because there's no lights on the bike and there's no lights on the track. I mean, how could you see? So there's other motorcycles and other activities taking place out there. Don't have anything to do with us. We haven't, you know, the one lady testified, I think it was Miss Parrish, about in August when her, God bless her mother, you know, passed away. There'd been no riding out there in August, so obviously it was somebody else. I mean, there's other motocross activity going on in that particular area. We have no control over that. As far as traffic, they make 1 or 2 trips in and out of there a day. They come in the morning, they leave in the afternoon. That's it. I mean, there's no traffic. I mean, there are literally, I won't say hundreds, but there are many residences and people out there that have ATVs, have motocross bikes, 4-wheel drive trucks, and all those things. We don't control that. And so there is no, Mr. Brown will tell you, no impact whatsoever from traffic as far as our facility. Not saying there's not problems out there. I've been out there when there were motocross bikes on the road, had nothing to do with our facility. You know, the fact of the matter is, if you never approve something because somebody thought you couldn't enforce it or that you couldn't enforce the ordinance, you never approve anything, would you? So subsequently, if all of these conditions are adopted as part of the PUD, they are enforceable. And that Mr. Erkman has told me that he's taken his meter, his decibel meter, and gone to different locations in the county on weekends and different times to measure that. You know, it's unfortunate that you can't have 100 code enforcement officers all over the county. But the fact of the matter is, if any of these conditions are violated at any time, the PUD is null and void. So essentially, my client and the people, the operator, have all the incentive in the world to make sure that all these conditions are met and are adhered to. Now, we can't control what happens off-site the property. That's not, you know, and there's things going on. There are other motocross activity in the area. But these conditions significantly mitigate any off-site impacts from that track. I'll stop there. I think that it's pretty obvious if you adhere to your ordinance that's been adopted by law and the compatibility and what your comp plan says this is the location it's supposed to go. You know, I mean, it's really pretty clear cut. I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's probably a good time for me to do that. Before you all get into your deliberations on this matter, let me just go over a few points and some direction. It is, as you've heard today, not only from staff, but also from testimony, this use is allowed in ag classifications as a PUD. However, in determining whether or not to allow it in this particular location, you have to consider the requirements in 3.02.33 of the Land Development Code related to motorsports facilities. That dictates some of the minimum requirements in the PUD agreement. We've had Mr. Brown testify that in his opinion, those items are addressed in the PUD agreement. From there, you are required under the PUD section of the Land Development Code, which is 4.02.01, to consider a number of factors. 0.01 and 0.02. You're required to consider a number of factors. There are minimum requirements that you have to find in order to approve a PUD. And we've heard Mr. Young, I'll bring up a number of those factors, as well as staff has brought up a number of those factors. You've heard testimony on a number of those factors as well here today. There was a question about the Planning Commission motion, about there being some confusion, and I will tell you that members of the board of the Planning Commission have the opportunity, as you all do, each one of you has the opportunity to make a motion and have it seconded and have that motion voted on. They're no different. There was a question about, brought up today about what would be the recourse if the PUD were approved and there was noncompliance. Certainly, there is the opportunity to pursue the owners in a code enforcement capacity by the county. The PUD does not automatically go away on its own. There is a procedure for that through code enforcement, and then it would be brought back before you all to revoke a PUD. So there's a procedure for that. However, there's also a private action available to the surrounding property owners that they could pursue in that situation. There was a question raised about economics being a factor. It is not a factor that this board is to consider. This board is to consider those factors that are in our land development code, again, 4.02 specifically. At this point, after your deliberations, you have a number of options. You may approve the PUD as presented. You also have the right to modify the conditions in the PUD. So one could make a motion to approve with these different changes to what's been presented. I've heard a number of potential options, so those would be addressed in the motion. And finally, your other option would be to deny the request. And again, I would advise you, just as I advised the Planning Commission, that any motion to deny should specifically state the basis for the denial, and that basis should be based upon one of those factors set forth in our land development code in section 4.02.02.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, Mr. Manning, and this is one that's been following me throughout this whole day. Is motocross allowed in ag, or is it not?
It is allowed with a PUD.
Okay, so it's not a standalone permitted use in ag without a special exception or a PUD taking place?
Not a track, a racetrack.
A racetrack.
Certainly anybody could ride a motocross,
They can ride on their own
Absolutely.
property and do their own thing.
Right.
But if they want to have a business, they want to have a track, it has to have a special exception or a PUD to allow that use in that area,
Well, it has to,
in ag.
staff can,
Yeah, it's Mike Brown, planning staff. It requires a PUD, motocross facility, or falls under a motor, at least staff's interpretation, that falls under the motorsports facility in the land development code, and that requires a PUD zoning to be approved.
So just because you have ag and you want to start a business, that's not an allowable use under our land development code.
Not by right without the
Not by
PUD.
right. Okay. You want to ride your own motorcycles on your ag property, it's your own business. But if you want to enter into a business, you're going to have a PUD to make that happen.
For a motocross business, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I was trying to see if somebody else wanted to take a shot at it before I did, but it looks like not, I can't get that lucky. First of all, I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Brown. Where is this at in the codes process? I heard that they had gone to the codes and the magistrate had found them out of compliance, and so which wouldn't have been the PUD out of compliance with the current zoning. So he put a fine on them as of a certain date, or is this until this hearing's over?
Yeah, as county policy has been, and continues to be, as far as I understand, is when an applicant, subject to a codes issue, is attempting to correct the issue and the process of going through the PUD to try to get approval for this use is an attempt by the applicant to resolve the code issue, that the special magistrate allows a stay of that fine period and the codes until the decision comes to finalization. In this case, the PUD is either approved or denied. It's basically stayed during that period until there's a decision by, in this case, the Board of County Commissioners on the rezoning.
Okay, thank you. I was going to bring up the issue in my remarks about the economic impact of a facility is not supposed to be used in the zoning issue, but our attorney brought that up for me, and I appreciate that. Also, I want to make clear that because an issue is allowed by a PUD does not mean that issue or that use is allowed, is compatible in the PUD. That's the reason we have this process. If we didn't need this process to make sure that a use is compatible, it would be allowed by right in that zoning instead of having to come and ask for permission to do whatever use it is in the PUD. I I feel sorry for the owners that they went in and they decided to have their own motocross facility for their kids to ride on. And then decided to take it to another step and turn it into a money-making venture. But we can't use that part of it, the money-making venture, the economic effect of this. I don't see how we can use that in our decision. That's what I've been told. We can't take the economic factors of it. So it's basically comes down to one question. Is this a compatible use to the area or not? And I think it's there because it's consistent with the comp plan, or staff would not have recommended it. Being compatible, in my opinion, is an opinion of the people whose opinion counts, and that's us today. And so personally, I think that this facility, while it may be consistent with the comprehensive plan, I do not find it compatible with the community. If I'm not mistaken, these people, the owners, can still do what they built the facility to do. They can go out and let their children ride when they come over from Sweden or wherever they need to be. They can still go do that by right, if I'm being told correctly here. They just can't have an event. They can't have a business. The travel trailers that I don't know how in the world they ever got permitted in the first place, because they are not allowed even by permit in an agricultural zoning that I'm aware of. And I may be wrong, but they were supposed to have been like 3 or 4 of them already permitted. I just don't see how, because I don't think they're allowed there. So personally, I just wanted to state my opinion that I do not think this is compatible with the area, and the owners can still use that piece of property for what they originally bought it and developed it for, which was letting their children or their family ride on this piece of property. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so I have a motion to,
Well, I haven't made a motion yet. I just
Okay.
had discussion at this point, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Chairman?
yes, sir.
I served on the planning commission for a couple years, so I was actually surprised when I got emails about the content in them about the amount of money that the actual investor had invested in this piece of property, because you're not supposed to take that in consideration as we just spoke about how much economic impact it would bring to the community. We could say on the other side that evidently there's residents out there that may have their life savings in their homes out there also, so we can't take that in consideration. I do also feel this is an unfortunate situation. This property was purchased for evidently a personal purpose of recreation with motorcycles, ATVs, and such. I don't understand why, if somebody with the means to purchase a property like this and had the experience of somebody coming in to change this to a business venture, that they did not contact the county at the beginning. Maybe things would be a little different. So then we transition to the PUD, and the PUD is to be able to put unique types of development within a certain area. I understand we could put a lot of restrictions. I do have questions that they could be enforced and who is going to enforce them. But just in case we could, would those restrictions satisfy the surrounding landowners? And who will enforce them? I also have concerns about the road maintenance. Class 1 road is maintained on a regular schedule by the county, but the increased traffic, who will take care of that? There's been no mention of that by the property owner. Taxes, we haven't talked about taxes. Does this go to a commercial zoning, I guess? So maybe the tax base would be a little more, I'm not sure. But to me, where this boils, where it comes down to, is I understand a PUD and why we have them, but it has to be compatible with the surrounding areas. And that's where I have my issue. I'm not against a motorcycle track. I'm not against any business. I am definitely for development in this county, and we need it. But I just don't think that this particular venture fits in this particular location. Thank you.
Mr. Lible.
Okay. As the sitting commissioner in this district, I do want to address some of the concerns we had, particularly on Milligan Road, folks. You'll see the millings off West River Road and also the Mill Road are the latest millings we put out there, and it's all in an effort to keep the dust down. So I'm seizing this opportunity to address that. And we hope in the future to pave Milligan Road. And if y'all have lived out there long enough now to know what it was like before we put the millings down. So I apologize for the dust. There's only a small section of it that's still being lime. It's actually shell rock dust is what you're experiencing. It's not lime. But we hope to do something about that. I apologize. But the increased traffic is not from this facility. I will defend them on that. They've been closed for 5 months. But there are just more people using Milliken between West River and Palmetto Bluff. I mean, I see it. Well, we're out there doing maintenance. I mean, you're saying no, but our maintenance calls have gone up. So I don't know who the people are calling. I can't identify them, but we're trying to improve is what I'm trying to say here. It's been said, particularly by Commissioner Turner and Commissioner Pickens, the compatibility, Brad, Phil, I just don't see it. They're very much a piece of the equation. These are the people I represent. They don't want it. And I really tried to convince the owner of this facility to go directly to them to show them what he had done as far as sound. It comes down to noise. The whole thing comes down to noise. And if this ever were to go to, the industry go to electric bikes, I'll support it completely because they make no noise. They have a right not to be noise. And George Young did call me you talked to me that day from your porch, and I could hear it loud. And nothing in your effort has changed that. And I can't support it either at this point. So that's it.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Harvey.
One last comment. You know, I concur with a lot of the comments that are going on today that I don't feel like it's compatible to the area as the area is. And we have not taken personal private property rights away from anybody. They still have the ability to use the use as they intended it from the beginning. So I think we've done our due diligence here today. We've listened to the neighborhood, and I just don't feel like it's a compatible use myself.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Turner.
with regards to case number, I'm looking for the case number.
PUD 1802.
PUD 1802, the case before us. I move that we deny, and the reason that we use is that is, in our opinion, it is not compatible with the area for this PUD to be approved.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor that the suggested PUD be denied because it's not compatible with the surrounding area.
Right.
So we have a proper first, a proper second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that was unanimous. Thank you. I think at this moment, I'm just going to have a 3-minute recess because I know a lot of you want to clear out and we have a few things to finish. Thanks. Okay, we'll reconvene our meeting.
Doesn't fit it again.
Yeah.
Didn't fit their narrative. They had to be.
Becky, you know that's my favorite thing. Okay, we will move to our appointments, and I'm gonna start with Mr. Terry Turner.
Okay, on the Affordable Housing Committee, has anybody contacted Mr. McCormick to see if he wanted to continue?
Mr. McCormick.
Has anybody contacted Mr. McCormick on the Affordable Housing Committee to see if he wanted to continue? Okay, in that case, I have none at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay.
Could we possibly check with him and see if he's interested in going, and thank you.
Mr. Harvey?
I have none. I still want to point out that at your library board, District 5, Kathy Warren lived in Melrose. I think what happened is when they changed the districts, that got mixed up. So you still have one out there.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Thank you.
Not in Melrose.
Mr. Pickens?
John Goddard would probably be an excellent.
Can't have your spouse.
I would not volunteer.
I just have one question on the Value Adjustment Board. Has anybody touched base with Tom Townsend? Tom was at the orientation.
I can do that today.
You know, he was at our orientation, so I didn't think he may not know that his term has expired.
Multiple attempts, Commissioner, has been made to reach Mr. Townsend via phone call as well as email and mail, and we haven't responded, but I believe he may still be interested, he just hasn't.
I'll see him today in another meeting. I'll
Okay.
take that responsibility.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
I have none.
Okay. Mr. Lama?
All right, quickly, appointments, I'm sorry, we're not on Commissioner comments. I'll forego my time so Mr. Turner can get his lunch before he chews us all out.
All right. Well then, that nap.
I could tell.
What's your what is your, Commissioner Harvey, what is your favorite saying? You're just not as funny as you think you are.
Well, you're, as my wife says, hangry. Getting hangry.
Okay. Well, I have a library board appointment. That'll be Miss Mandy Altman, and I'll give you the information after the meeting. And so now we will move to Mr. Terry Suggs.
I will make this very brief. Great meeting today. This is exactly what, you guys are elected to do. You make these tough decisions. You handled yourselves well. But I will say, the only thing I took from today that was more important than what we did here this afternoon was this morning's ceremonial remembrance of 9/11. But Commissioner Goddard, I'd be remiss as your county minister if I didn't tell you how proud I was of both you and your son this morning for the poem that he wrote as a 10-year-old and your comments today. Thank you, sir, for representing this county.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Manning.
Really nothing beyond what our administrator expressed. I thank you all for participating in the 9/11 ceremony every year. It means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to everybody else out there.
Thank you. All right. I will start with Mr. Lible, and you said you wanted to
Mr. Comments. Well, I already picked on Commissioner Turner. I won't do any more. I just want to say that the mega adoption event, how proud I am, and you should be as a board of our animal services personnel. If you've never been in a room with 1,000 dogs, I encourage you to go do so. But out of all that madness and noise, obviously, we adopted 12 dogs out of 22, and it really, helps in our overall goal to get the overcrowding situation we're experiencing this summer back down to normal levels, and working very hard. So when you see one of those folks, congratulate them and encourage them. They work really hard. It takes a effort 7 days a week to make these rescues and these kind of events happen. Those people never turn it off. They go home with the county's mission, their job in mind. There are not many people I can say that about. And you did a great job. Hit a home run this morning at the ceremony with your son's poem and your commentary. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Buddy did a great job this morning, and it was a wonderful remembrance ceremony for 9/11. As you remember, last year, we were just starting with dealing with Hurricane Irma. So we had to not have that service, but I just want to commend all the staff, the sheriff's office, the emergency services, Public Works, everybody who was involved in that tough time to get us through that and get us back where the roads were open and where we could get on with our lives. So a good meeting today, and I think we'll just make it to our to the workshop. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. Mr. Turner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention for the last 2 meetings, or maybe 3, during commissioner comments, I made the comment that the county should really work hard the employees of the county should work hard to return phone calls. I want to say that I've had numerous people contact me in the last week or so saying that they have received phone calls back from Public Works and other departments also. So I just wanted to mention that I think we're heading in the right direction, and I appreciate everybody trying, because it's been said many times in the last few months, we are in the customer business. That's what we do. That's what we should be doing, and I appreciate them trying to get better at providing that customer service. I'd also like to join my other colleagues in saying you did a whale of a job, I thought, today at the commemoration ceremony, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say to you, happy birthday. You had a birthday recently, and that was a great occasion for you. And again, you really did do an outstanding job this morning. Do want to pray for the citizens in Carolinas that are fixing to have Hurricane Florence on top of them. And for my colleagues to my left and my right, I'm going to miss you on the campaign trail. I am off that trail now, and I'll be here till November of 2022 if that's the Lord sees fit. But it's been a hot summer to be campaigning, but I'm glad the signs are up and everything's put away. So thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone. I love this county. We have a great county here, but I'm so fortunate to be in this position at this time. The staff is fantastic, and this commission, I'm very proud of this commission. I wanted to say something to Mr. Lible because it's a lot of effort with the animal shelter, and it's not overlooked. People really see what you're doing. We appreciate it. I know we all do.
I appreciate the support I get from you all.
Every one of us, we're working hard, and it's just a good thing to see. I'm very proud to be on this board right now, even when we have these tough decisions. I'm very proud to be up here. And with that,
Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn,
that was quick. You
are
better
we
be
still,
quick.
are we still planning on 2 o'clock for the workshop, or?
I can eat lunch in 15 minutes. Y'all can't?
Yeah.
yeah.
I hope you got me more food than that.
You got Commissioner Liable a roast beef sandwich.
Why don't we wait till, we can postpone till 2:15 if we need to.
No.
Would that be is that what you're thinking?
Well, yeah.
But we wouldn't be postponing, we'd actually be closing this meeting.
We need longer than that. We can, there's.
Well,
We got,
may I, Mr. Chairman?
He's hangry.
I think if we only brought sandwiches for the commissioners, that we need to knock off for an hour or longer, because the people.
I'll order their lunches as well,
everybody
sir.
got lunch and
Yes,
two,
sir.
let's do
okay.
30 minutes. Let's do 15.
Yeah, let's do,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine. Let's do 30 minutes, Mr. John, for that.
Okay, so 2:15?
Yeah, if that suits everybody
All
else.
right, well, we will close our meeting, and we will have our transportation,
workshop.
workshop meeting, excuse me, my mind's gone. Our workshop meeting at 2:15.